Arcs. 1. The Road and the Ruminact.
1.
The Return, the Frozen Flower, sat on Black Princess's desk for 3 weeks. A crystal blue bloom that never rooted, never changed, just sat there catching the light.
From her monitor, like a little bit of another world, refusing to be forgotten. She touched it sometimes when she was alone, and every time she did it was warm, impossibly warm for something made of ice, as if it remembered the hand that had given it to her. One Tuesday night at 2 in the morning, the flyer pulsed a single deep throb of blue light that filled her entire room. La Princess sat up in her chair headset, half on screen offline, and watched as the light grew brighter, and the iron charm on her wrist, the one Aizen had given her, the one that meant unbreakable, grew so warm, it almost burned. She held the flower in both hands and whispered, "Okay, take me back!" The light swallowed everything. Her room, her screen, the looting boy that was perpetually stuck at 99%. And when it cleared, she was standing in an open field of tall grass under a sky so wide and blue it made her Stake! Chill air hit her lungs. Will wind pulled at her hair. And somewhere nearby, a bird was singing a melody she had heard before in another life. I'm back! I'm actually back! I'm actually back! She heard footsteps in the grass and turned. Frieren stood 10 bites away, silver hair catching the sunlight, those ancient eyes studying her with an expression that on anyone else might have been shock, but on Frieren was just a very slight widening.
You came back.
Frieren said.
Her voice carried something.
Love Princess had never heard in it before.
Once. Genuine. Unmistakable.
Her voice carried something. Laugh Princess had never heard it before.
Warmth. Genuine. Unmistakable warmth.
The frozen flower worked.
Black Princess ran at her full speed, no hesitation, and hugged the 1,000-year-old elf so hard they both stumbled backward 2 steps.
Frieren stood perfectly still for 3 seconds as if processing an unexpected input. Then, very slowly, very carefully, she put one arm around Black Princess's shoulder. Then, very slowly, very cheerfully, she put Neon around Black Princess's shoulder.
Welcome back.
She sat quietly.
I was beginning to think the spell had failed.
Black Princess laughed into the ropes.
3 weeks?
Frieren! It had only been 3 weeks! It has only been 3 weeks! Frieren pulled back and twisted her head.
3 weeks.
She said,
It has been 4 months here.
Black Princess stared. 4 months? Frieren nodded.
Time flows taken to be yours. I suspected as much.
I suspected as much.
She paused.
Himo has asked about you every single day. Haita has played for your return every morning. Aizen carved something, but will not say what it is. They will be happy.
Haita.
Has prayed for your return every morning. Aizen carved it ante, but will not say what it is.
Thou will be happy.
She turned and started walking.
Come. They are at the end in the next village. They are at the end in the next village.
The village was called Thornwall, a cluster of stone buildings with thatched roofs nestled against the base of green foothills. Smoke rose from chimneys. Children played in the main street, and the inn had a wooden sign shaped like a sleeping cat, swinging gently in the breeze. Black Princess followed Frieren through the door, and there they were, sitting around the table, covered in mugs and half-eaten bread. Hemul, Haita, and Aizen. Exactly as she remembered them. Exactly as she had dreamed them.
Hime saw her first, and his face did that thing. It did that. Sunrise smile that started at his mouth and spread outward until his entire being was warmth.
He stood so fast, his chair fell over. Himo saw her first and his face did that thing. It did that sunrise smile that started at his mouth and spread outward until his entire being was whirled. He stood so fast, his chair fell over.
Black Princess.
He said, and his voice cracked on the second syllable. Haita set down his tea with trembling hands. Aizen looked up from his bread, said nothing but the corners of his mouth moved in a way that from a dwarf was equivalent to sobbing with joy.
She opened her arms.
I am back. Miss me?
Actor Yi, the Toll Road Giant.
The reunion lasted 3 months a while and 1 round of arm wrestling that Aizen won by existing. Then Frieren spread a map across the table and pointed to a mark far to the east.
The ruins of Ustad.
She said.
An ancient city that fell 2,000 years ago. Beneath it, there is a market district sealed by temporal magic during the collapse, frozen in place, untouched. And somewhere in that market, a botanical archive holds the spell I have been searching for. And somewhere in that market, a botanical archive holds the spell I have been searching for.
Black Princess leaned over the map. What spell? Friorin's finger chased the roots east.
A spell that allows flowers to bloom in frozen ground. Winter Goini magic. It was lost when Vestad fell.
Winter Garni Magic.
It was lost when Maestad fell.
She paused.
I have been looking for it for 800 years.
Himunosh Black Princess whispered.
She has been looking for Gazini spells since before most kingdoms existed. This is completely normal behavior for her. This is completely normal behavior to her.
The rude east touched them through the Greymon Mountains, 3 days of rolling foothills that gradually steepened into real peaks. The weather was kind warm days and cool nights, and the road was good. Packed dirt and ancient cobblestones that had been walked by thousands of travelers before them. Himo sang matching songs, most of which he made up on the spot. And Black Princess kept his and tried not to think about the fact that her calves were on fire.
On the second day, they passed a merchant caravan heading west. 20 wagons loaded with spices and silk.
The lead margin spotted Himo and nearly fell off his horse. On the second day, they passed the merchant caravan heading west. 20 wagons loaded with spices and silk. The lead merchant spotted Himo and nearly fell off his horse. The hero!
She gasped.
Say, ito sarana! Hime waved cheerfully.
Just pass it through.
Luckily wagons. Luckily wagons.
The merchants insisted on giving them a barrel of dried apricots as kibit. Icing carried it under one arm without comment.
Black Princess whispered to Frieren.
Icing carried it under one arm without comment.
Black Princess whispered to Frieren.
Does this happen often? Praying says,
Can't see me. He cannot walk to a village without someone offering him fruit. He cannot walk through a village without someone offering him fruit.
the mountain paths appeared on the third morning, a narrow gut between two peaks that served as the only reasonable crossing point for 50 miles in either direction. The road funneled into a corridor of stone barely wide enough for two carts side by side. And sitting directly in the center of the pass was a giant. Not a metaphorical giant. Not a large man. A genuine 20-foot-tall gray-skinned mountain giant picking his teeth with a pie tree. Nappy-san stopped walking. all, the giant looked at them with eyes like dinner plates, set in a face that resembled a cliff that had learned to frown.
Toh.
He said, his voice rumbling like an avalanche clearing its throat.
You want to? You pay. You pay.
Hima stepped forward with his most dogmatic smile.
Good mind, friend. Ayuhime. Perhaps we can discuss Toto like civilized. Ainahama. Perhaps we could discuss Toto like civilized.
The giant hid off one enormous finger.
Buy gold each. Or turn around.
Himo's smile did not waver.
That is highway robbery!
The giant strided.
This is Mantan Pass. It is pass robbery. This is pass locally.
Himo tried Chen. He explained that they were on an important quest, that the fate of ancient botanical knowledge hung in the balance. But surely a giant of such obvious intelligence and refined taste could appreciate it. The OGC. The giant listened to the entire speech, nodded thoughtfully, and said,
5 gold each.
Imi turned to the group and whispered,
He is Oniu to Charisma. This is the worst enemy I have ever faced. This is the worst enemy I have ever faced.
Haito stepped forward next. He raised his staff and spoke of the Gomez's teachings on generosity, on the virtue of allowing travelers safe passage, on the cosmic reward that awaited them who opened parts rather than blocked peak. Him! It was a genuinely moving sermon, the kind that would have made a congregation weep. The giant waited until Haida was finished, then reached behind the border and produced a small wooden sign that read,
粒子理解。
Hypas I trashed. Himo patete his shoulder.
Gugifet.
Aizen walked up to the giant, looked up way up and said one word.
Move.
The giant leaped down at the dwarf, who was roughly the size of his kneecap, and said,
No. No.
Aizen-san.
Please.
The giant said.
Still no.
Aizen looked at the giant for 10 full seconds, then turned and walked back to the group.
I tried.
He said, Lampin says stay. That was your attempt of diplomacy.
Aizen shrugs.
I said please. That is already my words than most secure assets get.
This one.
That is already more words than most situations get.
Frieren studies the giant with the detached interest of someone examining a moderately unusual insect.
He is not Ostigi.
She said.
Just mercenary. This is a legitimate operation. He has been here for approximately. This is an economic toy operation. He has been here to approximately
Suppose!
8 years, based on the whereabouts on those borders.
The giant lifted supplies.
79.
Kikurette!
Frieren nodded.
Close enough.
She turned to the cliff.
We could fly over him. I could carry everyone, one at a time. I could carry everyone, one at a time.
Laughed Princess raised her hand.
I volunteer to not be dangle hobo a mountain passed by an elf, please. While they debated options, 3 goblins appeared on the rocks above the pass. Small green creatures with ghastly daggers and expressions of maximum mischief. They screeched on charge down the slope to get the party. Himo drew his sword so fast it sank. But before he could swim, the giant reached over casually, flicked one goblin off the mountainside with his thumb, caught the second by the ankle, and set it down facing the other direction, and the hit ran into the shin and knocked the young unconscious.
The giant looked at the party.
Black lens are free of charge.
He said.
Well, not good for business.
2 more goblins appeared, then 4 more, then a whole stream of them pouring over the hugs like angry green water. Apparently the pass was near a goblin warren, and the party had attracted attention. Himu and Aizen formed up shoulder to shoulder. Haita raised barriers, and suddenly the giant was stomping goblins like an exterminator with a grudge. His enormous foot came down, and 3 goblins became a cautionary tale about career choices.
Laugh Princess washed from behind Heiko's warrior.
Eating dried etricouts.
Frieren dispatched goblins with the minimum possible effort. A flick of her wrist froze one solid. A whisper of magic launched another into the stratosphere.
She looked almost bored.
La princess watched from behind Heiko's barrier, eating dried apricots. Frieren dispatched goblins with the minimum possible effort. A flick of her wrist froze one solid. A whisper of magic lashed another into the stratosphere. She looked almost bored.
These are the weakest monsters I have encountered in 300 years.
She said. Love Princess looked at the frozen goblin.
They are kind of cute though, in a horrible way.
Frieren looked at her for a long moment.
Do not adopt one.
She said, with the tone of someone who had seen it adopted before. The goblin wave ended as quickly as it began.
The surviving goglets fled back into the rocks, shrieking insults in a language nobody wanted to learn.
The pass was littered with frozen goblins, launched goblins, and goblins who had reconsidered their life choices.
The giant sat back down and resumed picking his teeth.
The pass was littered with frozen goblins, launched goblins, and goblins who had reconsidered their life choices.
The giant sat back down and resumed picking his teeth.
Happens every few days.
He said casually. He will clean his sword.
You know, if you let us stay for free, we would tell other travelers the pass is safe. Good for your business. Good for your business.
The giant considered this.
Stay 5 go.
La princess had been watching the giants carefully. Something about the way he sat, hunched and favoring one side, made he look closer.
She walked up to him, heart hammering, and asked.
Something about the way he sat, hunched and favoring one side, made her look closer.
She walked up to him, heart hammering, and asked.
Does your foot hurt?
The giant froze, not the temporal kind, the surprise kind.
How did you know that?
La princess Ponte. You haven't moved from that spot in 4 more years. You're not blocking the pass because you want to. You're sitting here because you cannot walk. You're not blocking the pass because you want to.
You're sitting here because you cannot walk?
The giant was quiet for a very long time.
His name was Grutek, and the sole in his left heel had been lodged there for 6 years, a jagged piece of obsidian that had worked its way into the joint and could not be removed by giant hands that
were too large to reach it.
The tall money was not greed, it was his only way to afford food since he could no longer hunt.
Haito knew by their enormous foot and examined it. Haita named by the enormous foot and examine it.
This is a simple extraction.
He said.
Ichi.
If you let me work.
Gutak looked at the tiny priest and said,
You are smaller than my smallest toe.
Haita smiled.
That is an advantage in this case.
Haita walked for 20 minutes, golden light, illuminating the giant's heat as he carefully designed the store with focused divine magic. Aizen provided structural advice from his experience with rock. Freya monitored the healing process with clinical precision. He may hold a conversation with Grotak to keep him distracted, telling him about the quest for the gardening spell. And like Princess sat on a boulder near the giant's knee and told him about the internet, which fascinated him more than anything else. The obsidian fragment came free with a pop that echoed off the mountains. Gultok flexed his foot, then stood for the first time in 6 years. He rose to his full height and the shadow he cast covered the entire path.
The drone shook with his step as he tasted the joint.
Then he looked down at the 5 small people who had hugged him, and his enormous craggy face split into a grin like a canyon opening.
He rose to his full height, and the shadow he cast covered the entire pass.
The ground shook as Ick said as he tasted the top.
Then he looked down at the 5 small people who had helped him, and his enormous craggy face split into a grin like a canyon opening.
Nomoto.
He said,
Not for you. Not. Not anyway. I am going home. Napanian. I going home.
He stepped over them like they were mushrooms and walked east. Each footstep a small earthquake of joy.
Act-san? The Sunken Market. Act-san. The Sunken Market.
The market is 2 miles straight down.
Frieren said, studying the map by Konjog light.
The entrance is sealed, but I can open it.
The party stood at the edge of a massive sinkhole. The remains of Boystad Central District, visible far below, frozen in time, untouched for 2,000 years.
Himo peered over the edge. Hammer peered over the edge.
That's a very deep hole.
Faces.
You are afraid of holes.
Himi said,
I'm afraid of falling into holes. There is a difference. Though it's a difference.
Frieren raised her staff and spoke a word of opening that echoed down into the darkness.
The magical seal on the market shimmered, clapped, and dissolved like ice in spring. A staircase spiraled down the sinkhole's wall, impossibly preserved after 2 millennia. Aizen tested the 4th step with his boots. A staircase spiraled down the sinkhole's wall, impossibly preserved after 2 millennia.
Aizen tested the first stop with his boot.
それって。
He reported.
Hey.
Himushmai.
A staircase. 교큰 시베렛. 하악한 스기핫.
Frieren said,
The seals were designed to be opened, not broken. The builders expect visitors. The builders expect visitors.
They descended into the Sunken Market.
the air grew cold and still, heavy with the silence of 2,000 years.
The architecture was elven. Graceful arch, flowing curves, walls carved with floral patterns that had never faded. Every stall was exactly as it had been on the day the city fell goods laid out. Coins on corners, food in baskets.
La Prinsa whispered. Every stall was exactly as it had been on the day the city fell goods laid out, coins on counters, food in baskets.
La Princess whispered.
It looks like everyone just...
Vanished. Frieren said.
The death, the Tantuo seal, preserve the moment of collapse. The people are frozen somewhere else, but the market remained. The Tantoro seal preserved the moment of collapse. The people are frozen somewhere else, but the market remained.
The market was vast, a subterranean city of commerce, stretching in all directions. They passed a bookery with birds so perfectly preserved it looked fresh.
A drew a stall with gems that caught Frieren's countered light and threw it back like trapped stars.
A fountain that had stopped mid-splash, frozen drops of water hanging in the air like crystal tears.
Himil tucked one of the frozen droplets. A fountain that had stopped mid-swash, frozen drops of water hanging in the air like crystal tears. Himmel touched one of the frozen droplets.
This feels wrong.
He said quietly.
Walking through my house's last moment.
The goddess teaches that we should respect the dead. This is respecting legacy. This is respecting the legacy.
Frieren stopped at a stall marked with a symbol, a balloon flower carved into the wood.
Botanical archive.
She sighed. The stall was small, crammed with skulls and dry specimens and clay pots of seeds.
She pulled the scroll and unrolled it with reverent care.
Her eyes moved across the text.
with the intensity of a mage, reading something she had been searching for 800 years.
Her eyes moved across the text with the intensity of a mage, reading something she had been searching for 800 years.
This is a fragment,
She said,
a reference. The full archive is deeper. The full archive is deeper.
but something moved in the shadows behind the stove. Something that was not frozen, not preserved, not part of the seed monic. Aishan's axe was in his hand before anyone else registered the movement. Aizen's axe was in his hands before anyone else registered the document.
Behind me.
He said 2 words that were an entire battle plan. A shape emerged from the darkness, a creature of stone and old magic, animated by the seal's residual power, built to guard the archive. It had no face, only a single glowing eye that swept across the party with mechanical precision. It had no face, only a single glowing eye that swept across the party with mechanical precision.
It's a guardian.
Frieren said,
Out magic. Very old. It won't reason. It will only protect. But what reason? It will not protect.
The creature launched, silent and fast.
Aizen met it head-on, his axe sparking against its stone body.
The impact shook the market shelves, sending scrolls and pottery crashing to the ground.
Himu moved along the creature's flank, his sword finding joys in its construction.
Who is the killer?
Chikodot! Frieren studied the creature's movements.
In the chest, behind the big stone.
Haito raised his staff.
Can you hold it?
He asked Aizen. Aizen planted his feet and caught the guardian's neck strike on his axe handle.
Yes.
He said through gritted teeth.
Kami saw his moment and leaped onto the creature's back, driving his sword into the joint between neck and shoulder. The guardian staggered, its eye flickering. Frieren spoke a single word of unbinding, and the magic holding the creature together dissolved. It corrupted into gravel and dust.
The dusk shattered.
The party stood in the silence of the archive, breathing hard. La Princess looked at the skulls studded around the destroyed stove. Did we break anything important? Frieren and Naoto began carefully gathering the buoyant skulls.
The spell I need is sealed in the archive vault.
Shisan. Yeah.
We must find the key.
Haita knelt to help her, his gentle hands sorting ancient papers with practiced care. Himu sheathed his sword.
Avoid. Yeah, of course. Everything Barapa in the magical ski has a vault.
The vault door was set into the floor of the archive, a circle of stone carved with elven script worn by centuries. Frieren read the text aloud.
The key is knowledge. The lock opens when the seeker proves they understand the value of what they seek.
She looked at the party.
A riddle.
The elves were fond of dolls.
Laughed Princess, knelt and traced the carvings with her fingers. It was a password. Frieren shook her head.
Not a word. Understand it.
The riddle required them to answer a question about botany, about the nature of growth and persistence. Frieren answered it with the precision of someone who had spent 800 years studying exactly this subject.
The vault door sank into the earth, revealing a small chamber lined with skulls and jars and preserved specimens.
The air inside smelled of herbs and urge and earth. Frieren stepped forward, her hand reaching toward a single scroll sealed with wax and tied with green ribbon.
I found it,
She said,
the Verden Vigil.
She unrolled the scroll with crumpling fingers and read the 12 words.
Then she written again.
And again.
Hemel watched her with a gentle smile.
Is it real?
Frieren looked up, and her eyes were wet unexpectedly. Impossibly wet for the elf who never showed emotion.
It is real.
She said,
It is real. I have been looking for 800 years.
Haita bowed his head in silent thanks.
Eisen said nothing, but his hand found their shoulder for just a moment.
Black Princess stood at the edge of the boat and watched an Earth who had lived 1,000 years finally stop searching for something she had wanted all along.
Yeah.
Ready? They left the Sunken Market with the boson visual, carefully secret in Frieren's pack. The frozen fountain drift as they passed it, the temporal seal finally healing its magic behind them.
The water began to flow again. First drops, then a trickle, then a stream.
2,000 years of frozen time melting into motion. Himo poised to wash it.
It's like the city is waking up.
He said.
Frieren said.
It is. Hey. The seal is failing now that the archive is opened. This market will be flooded またでdecade.
Black Princess looked back at the stalls and the frozen moments. At least someone finally found what they were looking for here. Climbing out of the sinkhole was harder than descending.
The stairs were steep, and the sun was setting when they finally emerged onto the surface. The Grey May Mountains stretched before them, pointed orange and gold by the dying light. Himo stretched with a Tuaska groan.
That was the deepest hole I have ever visited.
Icy said.
You have visited many holes.
Imu said.
I visited many holes. This one was the deepest.
Black Princess laughed, her voice echoing across the empty plain.
This is the strangest vacation I have ever been on.
Frieren sat on a rock and opened the scroll again, studying the 12 words by the fading light.
Her lips moved silently, memorizing each syllable. Haga built a small fire-efficient, creek-practiced. I sensei approach. Himu sat beside Frieren and said nothing, just being there the way Himu always was. Black Princess watched them all and felt something settle in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. She was part of this now. Natta Hiseta! No Yokusaiba! No? Kato it?
I can cast it tomorrow.
Frieren sighed. 5 minutes holding this goal.
あと。The conditions will be optimal.
Himi nittate harezan.
Then we'll have to garden Babiakashi.
Frieren looked at him, and there was something in her expression that Black Princess had never seen before. Anticipation. No calm or patience or Asian detakant. Anticipation.
She was looking forward to something.
Yes,
She said,
私にかければ
we walk.
Act yo, the forest of trees. The door marked
たった2個ありarchive.
did not read the books. It led to stairs, stone steps, spiraling upward through raw earth and root systems. They climbed for what felt like an hour, the walls gradually shifting from carved stone to packed dirt to tangled roots interwoven so tightly they formed a living tunnel. Then light appeared about green and golden, the impossible warm after the underground. They emerged through a gap between two messy goats into a forest. So ancient the trees made the ones back home look like houseplants. Frieren touched the nearest tree and closed her eyes.
These are inibaran sentanoji.
She said,
Klanteba erums 18 years ago. As guardians of knowledge. We are in the trial forest.
La Princess looked around at the enormous trunks, wider than houses bark, silver gray and carved with spirating symbols.
Trial forest.
she repeated.
Which means trials.
Frieren nodded.
The elves Typical archive botanica magic here. Did not believe in lucks and keys.
They believed in weediness.
The forest itself will test us. If I prove worthy, it will lead us to the archive.
Frieren continued.
If we do not,
She paused.
it will lead us in circles until we give up or die of old age.
Himu grinned.
一面機それ好きにエクセレンツ
Aizu said,
I would prefer a Nomoto, but here we are.
the first trial found Ken with dominance. The path narrowed into a globe of mushrooms the size of umbrellas, their caps deep purple and glowing with faint bioluminescence. Pity!
Black Princess said, reaching toward one.
Frieren grabbed her wrist.
Toxic spore mushrooms.
She said,
One touch release plurish close. The spores hang in the air for hours. We need to close the grove without disturbing any of them.
the path through was maybe 30 feet. The muscles were everywhere. Himmel went first, stepping with the precision of a man who had navigated dungeons for years. He placed each foot like it was a chess move. Heel down, weight shift, toe down, next step.
He made it 15 feet before his cape.
Brushed the mushroom cap.
The cap posed and a cloud of purple spores bloomed outward. Himmel froze, held his breath, and the cloud drifted past his face by inches. He exhaled.
Keep off next time.
He whispered.
Aisin said,
Toji caves were impractical.
Imi-san,
Fashion has cost.
Aizen went next and used the direct approach.
he was too wide to fit between the mushrooms, so he simply walked very slowly and very carefully while holding his axe horizontally to push caps aside without breaking them. The mushrooms bent like river and sprang back into place. It worked until one mushroom cap was apparently load-bearing. It tipped over, hit another mushroom, which hit another, and suddenly a chain reaction of purple clouds erupted across the left side of the grove. Aizen sprinted through the last 10 feet like a drug-shaped bullet. Hoita created a divine wind tunnel that pushed the spore clouds sideways, carving a temporary safe corridor through the chaos. He walked pretty calmly while reading his travel journal, multitasking his divine gift and his hobby simultaneously. Frieren levitated over the entire grove, because apparently that was always an option. When Black Princess asked why she didn't mention flying earlier, Frieren said,
myself.
Then she looked at the mushroom disaster and added,
Also, it will not have been educational.
La Princess stated.
This is Ayase?
Black Princess was the last one through.
The spur clouds had mostly cleared thanks to Haiku's wind, but pockets of purple mist still hang in low spots.
She heard her breath and moved as fast as she dared, dodging mushroom cops like the world's worst obstacle course.
She almost made it, but 2 feet from the exit, her feet caught a root and she stumbled into a cluster of 3 mushrooms simultaneously. Sposhi yotte everywhere!
She panicked, and the time freeze happened.
The spores stopped mid-air, frozen in place like purple glitter.
She walked through the frozen cloud and out the other side.
Now that is interesting.
Frieren thought.
Your tempura ability froze the spores before you could take effect. You are developing instant defensive reactions.
Black Princess lifted off her hands, which were still faintly going.
Kill!
She said.
Kamako choet? Frieren said.
Not yet. That the forest will teach you, if you let it.
Behind Ding, the frozen spurus Dorian poked harmlessly into empty air. Himu patted her shoulder.
That was almost graceful.
She said, "We both know it was not." The second trial came as sound before sight, a howl that echoed through the sunken trees like a chord struck on an instrument made of wind and forest. Then another howl, answering the first, then a third, a fourth.
Silver shapes appeared between the trees. Wolves the size of horses with fur that shifted like moonlight on water. Their eyes golden and intelligent.
These were not animals. These were guardians, elven werewolves bound to the forest by magic older than nations. There were at least 20 of them. The alpha stepped forward, a massive beast whose shoulder reached Homo's chin, silver blue fur rippling with contained power.
It looked at each member of the party in turn, its golden eyes assessing, weighing, judging.
Then it fixed on Himmel and Snow, noting Anku in challenge.
How's Himmel skating?
Himmel looked at the wolf. The wolf looked at Hile.
Something ancient passed between them, directed in a sea of one leader by Himmel sheathed the sword.
This is not a fight.
He said.
5つduo.
Himmel stepped forward alone, unarmed. The alpha learned not to kill, to test. Himmel sidestepped with dancer's cries, and the wolf's jaws closed on air. It spun and launched again. Himmel caught its momentum and redirected it past him like a matador. The wolf landed, turned, and this time approached slowly, shakily.
Himmel mushed its base.
Two bees moving in a spiral of mutual respect. The wolf stopped, sat, and bowed its enormous head.
Himmel bowed to Pack. The pack parted like a silver curtain and the path forward opened. Haito whispered.
Did just automatisma a half.
Aisin said.
Yes. That is extremely Himmel.
Beyond the walls, the forest changed. The centennial trees grew closer together, their branches interweaving overhead until the canopy was solid, a roof of living wood that let through only needles of green light.
The ground was covered in soft moss that swallowed their footsteps, and the air hung with magic so thick Life Princess could taste it like static electricity mixed with pine sap.
This erstwhile will be different.
Frieren said.
Even test, always Ascolite. The first tests the body. Tosakun tests the character. The third tests the mind.
They entered a circular clearing where 9 stone tablets stood in a ring, each carved with urban script that called faintly in the filtered light. In the center of the ring, a path continued forward but was blocked by a wall of thorns so dense not even Aizen could cut through. Hiii read the targets one by one.
Riddles,
she said.
We must answer at least 6 of 9. Correctly. Wrong answers. Grow the thorns. Kiku.
Himmel rubbed his hands together.
I love riddles.
Aison said.
I do not.
Haita-san.
Godas provides. Godas also enjoys wordplay.
The first tablet read.
I am lighter than air. Yes, no one can hold me for 10 minutes.
Why am I?
Himmel said immediately.
Brisk.
The tablet's glow changed from white to green, correct? Diseko reads.
I have cities but no houses. Forest but no trees. Water but no fish.
Frieren said.
Aim off.
Kri ore. Guitar tablet.
The more you take from me, the larger I become.
Aizen said without hesitation.
A whore.
La princess there. I thought you didn't like riddles. Aizen shrugged.
I mine whores for a living.
The fourth tackled.
I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have nobody, but I come alive mid-wind.
Haita said.
An echo.
Green. The hit tablets!
What can travel around the world while staying in a corner?
Everyone stared at it, long silence.
Black Princess said slowly, E-stamp.
4 black faces lifted at her.
On a letter.
She exclaimed.
You put a stamp on the corner of a letter and the letter travels. The tail had glowed green, Hiii said.
What is a stamp?
Laughing said. I will explain later. 5. Correct? 1 more neither. The 6th tablet read.
I am always in front of you, but cannot be seen.
Frieren considerate. Himugus.
Tufucha.
The tablet glowed green. 6 just 9.
The Tong Wu shuddered. Taunts retracted into the earth like Finko-san Kairin.
The pot flowered opened. Frieren backed at the remaining 3 tablets.
We do not need this.
She said.
But the newest one is wrong anyway.
Everyone looked at her.
She said.
The answer it wants is wind. But the actual answer is time. Elven riddlesmiths were not as clever as they thought.
The forest deepened beyond the radar ring. The trees here were different, not just old, but conscious. Black Princess could put down watching.
Zooming the attention to avoid the party like enormous slow thoughts, considering whether to care.
The moss underfoot trickled into a carpet, so lush it was like walking on clouds. And then the trees parted into an arena, a natural amphitheater of living wood with a floor of packed earth 50 feet across.
And in its center stood something made of stone and root and ancient purpose.
The stone sentinel was twice Eisen's height and wider than a cart, a humanoid figure carved from green granite and threaded with living roots that pulsed like veins. Its eyes were 2 amber crystals, set deep in a face that had been old when the forest was young. It said nothing.
It simply raised its fists, each one the size of a barrel, and slammed them into the ground. The impact sent a shockwave of dirt and stone that knocked everyone except Eisen off their feet.
Eisen braced and said,
Finally. Something that speaks my language.
The battle was chaos. The sentinel swung stone fists that shattered trees and split the ground. Himon danced around it, sword flashing at joints where root met stone, each strike sending sparks and splinters flying. The Senkitsu did not feel pain, but it tracked movement and adapted. When Hamidash left twice, it anticipated the third and caught his cape in a grip that lifted him up the ground. Eisen hit the Santono's knee with everything he had. The stone cracked. The sunken eye dropped Himmel and turned to the dwarf with what might have been respect. Kaita launched barriers to contain the sentinel's shockwave attacks, golden walls of prayer energy-absorbing impacts that would have flattened the party. Frieren circled, testing the construct with precise spells. Frost-cracked stone force pushed loot, but nothing put it down.
The anomizing core is distributed.
She said,
Not in one place, but spread across the entire body. We cannot destroy it piece by piece. We need to overrun the whole thing at once.
Eisen grinned.
I have an idea.
Eisen charged the sentinel head-on, not dodging, not fighting, just running straight at a stone giant twice his size. The sentinel swung downward with both fists. Eisen jousted his axe, caught both fists on his shoulders, and held. The ground beneath him cracked in a spiderweb pattern.
His boots sunk 6 inches into the earth, but he held a dwarf holding a mountain in place through pure stubbornness.
Hime understood Ishteni.
He leaped onto the sentinel's back and drove his sword into the dungeon where head met shoulders.
Frieren saw her moment. With the sentinel pinned by Aisin and pierced by Himmel's flight, she poured frost magic directly through the sword like a conductor. Ice spread from the wound, outward, crawling across stone and root, freezing the distributed animation core all at once.
The sentinel shuddered.
Its amber eyes flickered.
Then it went still, frozen solid from the inside out.
Aisin jerked to a knee, panting. Himu slid off the back, his sword ringing as it came free. La Pintas rose it over and helped Aisin up. He said, 自己がどんだいれんだよ.
Heavy.
She said, you are ridiculous. As the sentinels floated from crab boots to gravel, the arena shimmered. Green light cutted in the center where the construct had stood, and the presence materialized not solid, not a body, but a shape made of leaves and light, and the collective awareness of every tree in
The forest.
the forest guardian spoke without sound, directly into their minds. And I ask one question. Why do you seek the cogning spool? Frieren answered without hesitation.
Because Himmel liked the flowers.
The guardian was silent for a long time.
Then the trees behind us parted with curtains, and the botanical archive stood revealed in golden light, a stone building covered in wives and blossoms. The answer was enough. The botanical archive was not unlike the green market hall. It was small, intimate, a single room of warm stone-covered floor to ceiling with flowering vines that had been growing undisturbed for thousands of years. Shelves lined every wall, holding clay parts of preserved seeds, dried flowers pressed between glass, and scrolls bound in leaf green ribbon. The air smelled like a garden in perpetual spring. Frieren stood in the doorway and did not move for a very long time. Her eyes swept the shelves with the expression of someone who had finally arrived at the end of a very long road.
Sish! Sish!
She moved through the archive with reverence, running her fingers along scrolls, reading titles in ancient Irvan.
Spore propagation. Roots stones of the singing oak. The mathematics of Peto, Shimuchiki.
She pulled scroll after scroll from the shelves, checking and replacing, her pace gradually quickening. Lock Princess sat on the floor and watched. This was Frieren at your most alive. Not casting battle magic or analyzing enemies, but reading about flowers with the intensity of someone reading love letters.
I find it.
Frieren's voice was very quiet. She held a small scroll sealed with a wax stamp shift like a winter balloon.
The Verdenbudum.
She said,
A spell for growing flowers in frozen ground. Designed by elven botanist. He believed that beauty should not be seasonal.
She broke the seal carefully, her hands steady despite something in her eyes that was not steady at all. She unrolled the parchment and wrote it in silence. Kitashi. Himo waited.
Haito waited.
Haito waited. Aisun waited. La Princess held her breath.
It is elegant.
Frieren said finally, and she almost smiled.
The spell works by creating a localized warmth field in the soil, just enough feet to mimic spring at root level, while allowing the plant to display winter hardy traits above ground.
The incantation is 12 words.
The mana cost is Neguretaku. Ano Campitan Mage Ketasut.
She looked up at the party.
It's 100 years,
she said.
I searched for 800 years, and it is 12 words and a warm thought.
Himose!
とベストケンス友人や
They laughed at the Panico Aikai as sunset painted the forest gold.
The trial tree stood like silent witnesses as the party walked the path that the forest itself had opened for them. No more mushroom spores. No more walk changes. No more riddles. The trails were complete and the forest accepted them as worthy.
Birds sang in the canopy for the first time since they were entered, and the path that had twisted and tested now ran straight and clear toward the edge of the trees.
La Princess noticed Frieren holding the scroll against her chest like something precious, which it was.
They made camp at the forest's edge, where the septimal trees made the open grassland and the sky stretched out in every direction.
Himo made a fire because Himo always built fires at the end of good days. Haita produced a bottle of wine that Kia Payan had been saving for exactly this moment. Izzy accepted a cup and drank it in one go, which meant he was in a good mood. The stars came out one by one like an audience taking their seats.
And for a while, they just sat together, 5 people who had walked through a dead city, fought a money golem, outsmoted a forest, and found 12 words that an elf had been looking for since before M.
Act 5.
The gardening spill laughed Princess woke before everyone else, which never happened.
She was the group's designated oversleeper, but something pulled her from dreams at first light as students in the air that had nothing to do with lag.
She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and walked to the edge of the forest where frost still clung to the grass.
The world was super and girled and impossibly quiet, and in the clearing ahead she saw Frieren alone, kneeling in the frozen grass, hands pressed flat against the earth. Frieren did not hear her approach, or perhaps she did and chose not to acknowledge it. She was whispering the 12 words of the Verdant Wiggle so softly they were barely more than breath-shaped into syllables. The froths around her hands began to melt, not from heat, but from something gentler, a warp that started in the soil and spread outward like ripples in a pond.
The grass under her palms turned green, then greener, and then a single shoot pushed up through the earth, thin and pale and reaching for light.
The shoot thickened. Leaves unfurled like tiny mouths opening.
A bud formed at the top and swelled.
And then, in the frozen morning air of a clearing in an ancient forest, a flower bloomed. White petals with edges of the softest blue, perfect and alive and growing in ground that was still frost-cuffed.
Red or Fook away.
Frieren sat back on her heels and looked at it for a very long time.
She did not move.
And Black Princess saw something she had never expected to see. A tear running down the elf's cheek.
La Princess sat down beside her, quietly, not asking, just being there.
Frieren did not wipe the tear away. She just let it fall and said,
Hemut used to bring me flowers every time we met Khan. Every time we passed the meadow. Every time he saw one growing by the road. He would pick it and hand it to me, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I would take it and hold it until it wilted. And I never once said thank you, because I thought there would always be another flower, another day, another chance.
She touched the bloom with one finger, tracing the curve of a petal.
By the time I understood what those players meant, he was already growing out. And by the time I learned to miss some, he was gone.
She spoke without drama, without weight, just facts. The way Frieren always delivered devastating truths, but her voice cracked on the word
gone. It
just slightly, like a hair-like fracture in glass that you only notice when the light hits it right. Shh. You can say nothing. She just put her hand on flares and hold it.
I spent 800 years looking for this bout. Because I wanted to be able to grow flowers anywhere, in any season, even in winter, even in frozen ground.
She looked at the single white bloom standing brayed in the frost.
So the next time someone hands me a flower, I will know how to keep it alive.
Black Princess felt tears running down her own face.
Now the quiet, devastating kind that come when you understand someone else's sorrow so deeply it becomes your own. That is the most beautiful thing I have ever heard.
She whispered.
Frieren almost smiled.
He will have said the same thing.
Hooksteaks behind him. He missed footnuts, always recognizable because he walked like someone he expected the ground to be grateful.
He stopped at the edge of the clearing, saw Frieren and Light Princess sitting together, saw the single white flower blooming in the frost, and understood everything without being told a single word Pippa.
Use Hemi always understood.
He sat down on Floweren's other side, looked at the flower and said,
That is a very good flower.
His voice was thick with something he did not name. Haita and Aizen arrived together, Haita with morning tea and Aizen with his axe already strapped on, because Aizen was always prepared for anything except emotional vulnerability. They saw the tree sitting around a single flower and they said too.
Nobody scanned.
Nobody needed to.
Haita said a quiet prayer that turned the morning air golden.
Aizen picked up a small stone and placed it next to the flower to mark the spot. He saw.
So we can find it again.
That simple gesture said everything about how dwarves show love. Frieren cast the spell again. One more flower, then another, then a dozen. Her hands moved with growing confidence, each casting faster and suri than dashed. White flowers and blue flowers and pale gold flowers split across the frost like stars appearing at dusk. 100 years of searching condensed into the morning of Lasgo! La Princess watched the clearing transform from frozen grass to a small garden and thought, this is what it looks like when an elf who does not know how to cry decides to brand a garden instead.
The garden grew to fill the entire clearing, flowers of every winter hardy variety blooming in impossible profusion, white and blue and silver and gold.
And in the center, the first flower, the one that had made Frieren cry, Citoles. Hime walked through the garden, touching petals and grinning like a boy. Haita cataloged each species in his journal. I examined the restructures with professional geological interest. And Frieren stood in the middle of her garden with her arms at her sides and her face turned toward the sun, and for one perfect moment she looked at peace.
Thank you.
Frieren said. She said it to the garden, to the spell, to the forest, to the morning, but mostly she said it to the memory of a man who had handed her flowers for years without ever asking for anything in return. And then she said it again, quieter.
Thank you.
This time, she was talking to Black Princess, because without the girl who fell through a crack in time, this garden would not exist, and this moment would never have happened.
Black Princess said, you found it yourself.
I just thought aloud.
Frieren shook her head.
You did more than that. You reminded me why I was looking.
The morning sun climbed higher, and the frost retreated from the clearing as if the garden itself was warming the world around it.
Himmer stood up and dusted his knees.
清本、ここではそん中に間延ばしにいるか？気をすれ中をかたんです。
この馬地木名と、それは誰かさ。
先メリ
ー。And they said,
上位語白。
The word. The word.
Home. Pippa.
Hung in the air like music, warm and drowned and full of the promise that wherever these five people walk together, that was home enough. Yes. La Princesa, let us go home. Act Yoku, the walk home. They left the garden, walking south. Frieren's frost flowers glowing behind them like a constellation that has shuttled on the ground. The forest was warm around them, alive with bird song and the rustle of things growing.
Black Princess walked beside Himmel, their shoulders almost touching.
Haita honed something curious and content. Eyes knit away with study boots and the satisfaction of a dwarf who had watched someone else have feelings without being required to participate. Frieren walked last, carrying a single white bloom tucked behind her ear. The path fueled downhill through dappled light, and as they walked, they passed the places their adventure had marked. The clearing where the stone sentinel had knelt, now scattered with wildflowers grow. In between the rubble, the rish where the wolves had howled, cried today, and far below, the faint shimmer of water where the Sunken Market swept beneath its lake. Every lamp up was a memory now. And La Princess realized this is why you made to live a story instead of just watching one. Himmel started singing a traveling ballad with too many voices and not enough melody, and he sang it with the full confidence of someone who believed Walloon was a substitute for talent.
Haita joined on the chorus, somehow making it worse.
Aizen walked faster to get ahead of the sound.
Frieren showed no reaction, which meant she was either enjoying it or had turned off her ears with magic, which Log Princess strongly suspected was a real spell she had learned specifically for the spur.
Booth!
Log Princess laughed, and the laugh echoed through the trees, and for a moment the whole forest felt like it was laughing with her. They stopped on a hilltop as the sun began its slow gold descent toward the horizon. The sky turned the color of honey and old copper, and the world stretched out below them, green and gold and impossibly wide. Somewhere out there was Torwall and the inn with the sleeping cat sign and beds that were just straw and wool but felt like clouds after days of walking.
Black Princess sat on a rock and looked at her friends, all of them silhouetted against the sunset. Something in her chest tightened, not pain, just the way that knowing that some moments are too perfect to last. Fraying, Lapis-esa, will you keep looking for spells after Orima's gone?
She does not mean to say it. It slipped out the way honest things do when the light is low and the air is warm and you have spent too long thinking.
Freya looked at her with us inching eyes.
Of course.
She said,
There are always more spells.
She paused.
But the looking is different. When you remember who you were looking with.
Imo pretended not to hear. Aizen pretended Haida.
Haida smiled into his flask.
And La Princess nodded. Because some answers do not need a reply, they just need to be heard.
The ion charm on her wrist paused Worm just once, a soft, deep throb like a 7 heartbeat.
Last Princess floated in her bones. The worlds were shifting again, the way they did when something was ending.
She said nothing, not yet.
She wanted 5 more minutes, 5 more steps, 5 more bloofs of air that tasted like pine and ancient stone, and the road stretching endlessly ahead.
Shriek.
The crystal flower in her pocket shimmered, its blue light leaking through the fabric like a secret it could not keep. Not yet! Shitok! Just tokeranga! They saw Thornwall's lanterns, first small warm points of light appearing on the horizon like earthbound stars.
The village where this adventure had started. Reunions and maps and breadcrumbs on a table.
Black Princess felt the charm pulse again. Stronger now.
And the blue light from her pocket was bright enough that Frieren noticed. Florian looked at the light, then at Black Princess, and she understood immediately because Florian always understood the things that mattered even when she pretended not to.
You are leaving,
she said. No question, just a fact. Stated the way Friary stated all devastated things with perfect con. Black Princess hugged her first long and tight and full of everything she could not say. Frieren hid still for 3 seconds, and then she held her back.
Next time.
The elf said,
Bring snacks from your wall. I want to understand what a chip is.
Hammer took both her hands in his and gave her the sunrise smile.
We will be here.
He said.
Always.
Aizen nodded once and pressed a new ion charm into her palm.
Back up.
He said.
Hiii blessed her with words that turned the air golden and added,
Try to eat more vegetables.
"The light swoos warm and infinite and pulling her between worlds." The last thing she saw was 5 silhouettes on a road at sunset, getting smaller, getting farther, but never disappearing. And then she was home, screen glowing, chair creaking, iron charm warm on her wrist, and the crystal flower on her desk pulsing once, twice, steady as a heartbeat. See you next time!
Arch knew the crown of ashes. Act 1, The Frozen Road.
The frozen flower had been quiet for 2 months. No pulses, no warmth, just a crystal blue bloom sitting on her desk, catching dust and monitor light. Like any ordinary impossible artifact from another dimension. That princess had stopped reaching for it, had stopped expecting it to grow, had always convinced herself that the adventure was a one-time gift and the universe did not give refunds or anchors. She was wrong. It happened at 3 in the morning because magic apparently had no respect for sleep schedules. The flower did not pulse. This time it screamed. A crike of blue light so sharp it split the darkness of her room like a wound in the air.
Ichi.
The iron charm on her wrist burned cold, not warm like before. Cold, biting cold that sank into her bones and tasted like winter and ash and something ancient that had been waiting a very long time to
Be fined!
She grabbed the flower, and the world shattered. Not gently, not the slow, warm dissolve of last time.
This was violent, fractured, like falling through a mirror into a reflection that was almost right but tilted 3 degrees wrong.
Colors inverted.
Sun contrast. Time itself steadied around her like her lack had infected the space between worlds.
And then impact. Real ground, real cold, and an air so thick with ash it ported her tongue in gray.
She stood in a dead field, not dead like Odom. Dead like something had reached into the soil and pulled the life out by the roots. The grass was black and brittle. It crumpled under her feet like charcoal. The trees in the distance were leafy skeletons with bark that walked dark sap, and the sky was the color of a blues, purple and yellow and swollen with clouds that looked like they had been holding tea. Hybrid for years. This is not the world I remember, she whispered.
This is a world at war.
The mountains to the north were wrong. Their peaks had been sheared off, not by weather, but by something deliberate, something with enough power to reshape geography as a statement. To the east, a pillar of black smoke rolls from the horizon like a nail driven into the sky. And far, far to the northeast, she could see it, a structure so massive it distorted the landscape around it, towers of obsidian and iron rising from a crater of scorched earth. The Demon King's castle. And it was close. Close no anything that terrifying had any right to be. Footsteps behind her, heavy and deliberate. She spun, and there was Aizen, but not her Aisan.
This Aizen was younger by what looked like years.
His beard was shorter, darker, and a scar.
She had never seen ran from his left temple to his jaw like a river on a map of bad decisions.
He wore armor that had been repeated so many times it was more patched than original.
His axe was different too longer. Neither. The axe of someone who had used it every day for a decade.
He looked at her, looked at the iron charm on her wrist, and his expression did something that, on anyone else would be invisible, but on Aizen was seismic.
He said, and turned back toward the tree line. She followed. Because what else do you do when a younger, scarier version of your friend says one word and walks away? The tree line opened into a small camp, hidden in a ravine. And there they were, the hero party, but war-worn and hardened and radiating the particular exhaustion of people who have been fighting for teeth. Yes, midaita day off. The fire was small and smokeless. Discipline burned into habit.
The tents were patched and faded, and the weapons leaning against the rocks were not decorative. They were tools that had been used that morning and would be used again tomorrow.
Kimu sucked when he saw her, and his smile was the exact same sunrise warmth that could light a room and break your house simultaneously, but the rest of him told a different story.
He was Dino, his jaw Shopa, his eyes carrying a weight that the Himoshi knew had either hidden or had not acquired yet.
Eishka Anispralam. A slight favoring of his right knee. 10 years of bleeding a war etched into a body that had once looked like it had never known hardship.
You are idle this time.
He said, and pulled her into a hug before she could answer.
Ori?
Ori? La princess into his shoulder. What am I, Ori?
Hima released her and held her at arm's length, still grinning.
弓じてるわすとこい。あばいこう言いずか。Stayed for an atane.
Frieren said,
The flower's magic works on imaginal restaurants across townwise. You come when you are needed, or when someone needs you.
He looked toward the castle on the horizon.
Support we need you now.
Haita sat by the fire with his travel journal open. The journal was 3 times thicker than the one she remembered, stuffed with loose pages and bookmarks and what appeared to be a praise flower between chapters 7 and 8.
He looked up and smelled the same. Gentle, knowing smile, but deeper lines framed his eyes, and his hair had gone gray at the temples.
Welcome back.
He said,
I would offer tea, but we are rationing.
He paused.
I have been saving your blessing there, for when morale needed it most.
He looked at her.
I tend this sacrifice.
Frieren emerged from a tent carrying a stack of skulls and stopped not dramatic. Friarichi naitu komachiku. She simply stopped the way a clock stops, complete and total stillness.
She looked at Black Princess with those ancient eyes, and Black Princess saw something she had never seen in them before.
Relief.
You came back.
Frieren said, and her voice carried the same devastating overstatement it always did, as if the sentence was about the weather and none about a girl falling through time to find her.
Your timing is either perfect or terrible. We march on the castle at dawn.
La Princess looked at each of them, really looked. Aizen's new scars and repair scarred armor, Hemeral's thinner frame and heavier eyes, Heiter's grey temples and overstuffed Juno, Frieren unchanged.
On the surface, but carrying a tension in her shoulders that had not been there in the peaceful version of her. La Princess knew. 10 years?
They had been fighting for 10 years. Sleeping in ravines and eating rations and watching the world burn around them. And they were still here, still together, still smiling when a lagging princess fuck.
You are get the sky. So, Lucky Zesad, sitting down by the fire with the casual confidence of someone who absolutely did not feel casual or confident. You are about to fight the Demon King, the actual Demon King, the final boss, the big bad smile. Himu sat beside her.
敵肉に礼あったてもろ。One my day of marching.
Black Princess stared at the castle on the horizon. It looked close enough to reach with a rock, but she suspected distance was another thing. The Demon King's magic distorted.
And you have a plan? Himu smile did not matter.
I always had a plan.
Aizen sat from across the fire.
His plan is walking in the front door.
Himu said.
See? Plan.
The wind shifted and brought the smell of ash and something sweeter underneath. corrupted flowers, she realized roses that had been twisted by demonic magic into something that still tried to cling.
Tea bloomed alone, petals facing inward, thorns spiraling like staircases to nowhere.
She found one growing between the rocks at the edge of camp, a red rose with black veins pulsing faintly with residual magic. It was horrible and beautiful, and she could not stop looking at it. Frieren appeared beside her.
The corruption is aesthetic.
She says,
The Demon King does not destroy beauty. He redesigns it. That distinction is what makes him dance.
Tomiyama-jin! La Princess! Frieren was quiet for a long time, the kind of long time that from an elf could mean either profound contemplation or my boredom.
He is old.
Frieren Piney said,
Not old like me. Old at the thing. I am afraid of becoming intelligent, patient, and completely certain that the suffering he causes is justified by a philosophy none of us can argue with, because it is not long, it is just incomplete.
She paused.
That is the most dangerous kind of enemy. The kind that makes you doubt whether fighting is the right choice.
La Princess looked at the castle again, its towers like black teeth against the bruised sky.
And what does he want? Frieren said,
That is the problem. He wants exactly what we want. A world without suffering. He just believes the fastest path there is removing the species that causes it.
Black Princess blinked.
Does he mean humans?
Princess!
He means everyone. In Koijimon's, his M-gang is silence. Perfect, eternal, empty silence. And what about this?
She looked at the corrupted rose.
He might not be wrong that it would be peaceful.
Night fell like a curtain, and the stars appeared, but even the stars looked different here. Dimmer, filtered through the haze of a decade of magical warfare.
Lakum. Sukin. Lasku.
Laugh Princess lay on her back on a flight rock and tried to count them. She got the 47 to go Hemo. He read on beside her and said,
We used to do this every night during the first year. Count stars. Haita would name constellations after desserts. Aizen would fall asleep in under a minute. Frieren McCrack. Haita and those constellations already had names.
He paused.
Somewhere around year 4, we stopped.
We did not say why, and she did not ask.
Are you scared?
She whispered.
Himo lived at the stores, and his expression was the most honest she had ever seen it.
On a single day,
he said. And then he smiled, and the honest folded back into words.
Moscaret and break Anusen muscle used differently.
I'm terrified of Lizinda.
He nodded toward the camp where Aizen was maintaining his axe and Hider was riding by Fire Knight.
And that terror is what makes me strong enough to walk in front.
He looked at her.
Tonight, I said that. They can't I feel us.
She said, I think they know. He says,
For me. But the performance matters.
The market bracelet on her wrist caught the firelight and Himo noticed it.
That is from the Sunken Market.
He said,
We have not been there yet.
Lockpiercer's blood went cold. She had forgotten. For him, this was before Arc 1, before the quest for the gardening spool, before the toll road giant and the riddle ring and the frost flowers.
Oh, that was his future.
A future she knew and he did not. She pulled her sleeve over the bracelet. It is just jewelry, she said.
Hime was steady for a moment.
You are a terrible liar.
He said gently.
But we're not pressing. Some things are better as surprises.
She almost told him. Almost set. You will search for a gardening spell and find a giant with a bad fit and explore Frozen Market and watch Frieren cry in a field of flowers. She grew from 800 years of learniness.
But the words stuck in her throat, because telling him the future meant telling him he had one. And if he had a future, that meant he would survive tomorrow. And she could not promise that could not So she said,
I am glad I am here. Anki said.
So,
And the stars kept company so behind. She slept badly, dreaming of things she could not name, and woke to the sound of Aizen sharpening his axe, which apparently he did before dawn because of course he did. The rhythmic scrape of stone on metal was the most Aizen sound in the world, patient and relentless and utterly certain of its purpose. She wrapped the blanket tighter and watched him work, his hands moving with the precision of a craftsman who had been doing this particular task for 40 years, which he had.
Morning.
he said without looking up.
We march in an hour. Eat something.
Breakfast was hard bread and dry meat and a cup of water heated over the fire.
Ratsori wedges.
Hiii called it because he had added a single dried herb to the water that made it taste faintly of mint. His journal entry for the morning read.
Day 3651. Was bread that could stop a sword and meat that predates several kingdoms. The princess ate it without complaint, which means she is either brave or her world has worse food. Mario status. Koshishi atamastek. Water. Ash.
They broke camp with military efficiency. 10 years of practice had turned 5 people into a machine. Aizen pets no habige.
Himachikte pyramide.
Heika blast the path ahead. Frieren Ibid has spoken.
And Black Princess tried to form the tent. Failed, tried again, failed worse, and eventually Aizen folded it with one hand while carrying everything else with the other.
She sighed.
I am hoping.
She said.
Aizen sit.
You are keeping us company. That is different and more important.
She stared at him.
That was 3 sentences from Aizen. That was a monologue.
The march toward the castle took them through the blighted lowlands, a landscape that had once been farmland. She can still see the ghost of it. Stone walls that had bordered fields, foundations where cottages had stood, a well with its buckets still hanging. The people were gone, evacuated, or worse, but their accents was louder than any battle. But their absence was louder than any battle. La Princess stepped over a child's wooden toy half buried in ash, and her chest tightened so hard she had to stop walking.
This is why we fight,
he said.
Not for glory, not for songs. For the people who had to leave their toys behind.
The closer they got, the more the land wolfed. Trees grew in spirals, their branches reaching downward into the earth instead of upward toward the sky. Streams ran uphill or sideways or not a well. Frozen meat flew like someone had paused the river and forgotten to press play. Black Princess felt an uneasy kinship with the broke but moments. I know how you feel! She whispered to it. Feeling crushed her.
You are talking to water.
Black Princess said, "Ito spafu sorotaete."
Frieren's expression did not change, but the faintest exhalation through her nose suggested she was amused.
They passed a field of corrupted flowers, roses with black veins and inverted petals, lilies that glowed faintly in the gray light like small trached ghosts, daisies whose centers were dark and spiral,
inward like mathematical equations that soaked into sadness. Free and stop, and studied them for a long time.
He could have destroyed them.
She says.
But he remade them instead.
Waste and destruction. Black Princess suit.
Yes.
Frieren says.
Because destruction admits that the thing mattered enough to erase. Corruption says it did not matter enough to leave alone.
She picked a twisted rose and tucked it into her bag.
For research,
she said, but her hands were very gentle with it. By late afternoon, the castle filled the entire northeastern sky.
Up close.
It was even more unsettling than from a distance. The obsidian walls were not rough or crude. They were polished to a bitter finish that reflected a distorted version of the landscape.
The towers were geometrically perfect, each one a different mathematical shape. Hexagonal, octagonal, one that appeared to have more sides than geometry should allow.
And the gates, the main gates, were standing open, wide open, as if the Demon King was either supremely confident or politely inviting them in.
Knowing him,
Frieren said,
both.
They made final temp a mile from the gates, close enough to see the torchlight flickering inside the castle, but far enough that the castle's defensive magic could not reach them. Or so Frieren said. If Black Princess noticed that the elf had set off 7 different barrier wards around the campsite, not the behavior of someone who felt safe. The last night before the biggest battle in a decade, and the party sat in a circle around the fire that Himmel had built larger than usual because Himmel understood that some nights needed a bigger feat. Enough for one spot for the night. La Princess sat between Haita and Aising, her knees pulled up to her chest, watching the firelight play across the faces of 4 people who were about to try something that most of the world considered impossible.
The Demon King had not been defeated in over 1,000 years of attempts. Entire armies had broken against its castle walls.
Legendary heroes had entered those gates and never returned. And these 4, a vain swordsman, a minimalist elf, a quiet dwarf, and a dry priest were going to walk in tomorrow like it was any other Tuesday.
She wanted to say something profound,
but all that came out was, "You know this is insane, right?" Himuract.
Otsuruka. That is what made it an adventure.
The fire burned low, and the party settled into the rhythms of a final night. Aizumon thanked his ex.
Haito Purig,
Frieren Rigsgals by Kongun Light.
Himmel stared at the castle, and his face carried the particular stillness of a man who was making his peace with whatever tomorrow held.
La Princess watched them all and felt the iron calm pulse warm against her wrist, not pulling her away this time, holding her here as if even the magic knew she needed to witness this. 5 people on the edge of the end of everything, and the fire and the stars and the long quiet hours before dawn. At the last campfire, nobody slept. La Princess knew this because she did not sleep either, and every time she opened her eyes, someone else was also pretending to be a Yi while clearly being awake. Aiden was lying perfectly still, but his fingers were tapping a riddle on his axe handle. Haita was flat on his back with his journal on his chest, rising and falling with breaths that were too measured to be unconscious. Frieren had not even pretended. She sat cross-legged, staring at the castle with the focus of someone solving an equation that used the entire sky as a chalkboard. The only one who looked peaceful was Himmel, who had fallen asleep smiling, which was either inspiring or deeply suspicious. Morning came gray and early, and Kimmel woke first or planned to.
He stood up, stretched his arms overhead, and said,
Good morning, Hires. Today we saved a life.
He said it the way Somayos might say.
Burst the swords.
Aizen opened one eye.
It is not money. It is still gray.
Himo said.
Every morning is gray. Thus, does not diminish the heroism.
Haida said from his bedroll.
Can we save the world after breakfast?
La Princess.
Is there breakfast?
Himo produced a bag from behind his back.
I has been saving these.
He opened it,
6 honey cakes wrapped in wax paper.
The group stared at them like they were holy relics.
Where?
Aizen said. And a single dwarf carried 14 layers of accusation. Himyo's smile was radiant.
I bought them in Olat's village 3 weeks ago. I was waiting for the right moment.
Haito sat up.
You had honey cakes for 3 weeks and said nothing while we ate military rations.
Kimo distributed them with the ceremony of a king bestowing Nike hats.
The sacrifices of little salt are mini unburied. 月がここりと話を終わるみたい。
Aizen bit into his cake and made a song that can only be described as a dwarf experiencing a religious moment. Black Princess ate heads in 2 bites and seriously considered the diplomatic applications of stealing Frieren's. Frieren okia honey cake and small precise bites while reading a scroll.
She freezed both simultaneously,
Which left Princess suspected was a 1,000-year-old skill of perfectly timed multitasking.
Hime watched her and said,
Did you enjoy that?
Frieren licked up.
The cake. Oh, the skull.
Birds.
The skull contained a sealing spell I have been looking for since the 3rd century, and the cake was adequate.
Henno clutched his chest.
Arigokai. I saved those cakes for 3 weeks through rain, through combat, through Aizen, searching my pack for spare rations, and they are adequate.
Frieren almost smiled.
They were good cakes, Hima.
And his entire face lit up like she had just declared him king of the world.
With breakfast handled, Himmel did what Himmel always did before a major event. He prepared the speech.
He stood on a raised rock overlooking the camp, culled his throat, adjusted his collar, pushed his hair back, and launched into what was clearly meant to be an address to a massive army.
Friends, comrades, heroes of the Uram, today we stand at the threshold of Tosuni. Behind us, the wall we swore to protect. Before us, the darkness we swore to defeat.
His voice carried across the empty ravine with the power and conviction of a man addressing thousands. This audience was 4 people and a fire that was going out. Aizen was sharpening his axe, the same axe he had sharpened last night and the night before and every night for 10 years. Haita was pouring the last of the water into a pot with the careful attention of a man performing sagari. Frieren had opened the second scroll and was comparing it to the first with an expression of academic intensity that suggested the feat of the world was less interesting than footnote 7. And Last Princess was trying to fold her blanket into her pack and losing the battle comprehensively. Himu did not notice the lack of attention, or if he did, he chose not to let it diminish his performance.
We have walked 1,000 miles together.
Himu continued, gesturing at the collage with the kind of sweeping out movement that cake designers dream about.
We have faced down giants and sorcerers and that one innkeeper who tried to choose us double because we quote looked important unquote. We have played together, laughed together. And yes, Haita, we have argued about whether divine magic or arcane magic makes better campfire starters. The answer is neither. It is Aizen with 2 rocks and spite.
Aizen did not lick up, but said,
Flint, not spite.
Himu said,
おつんからでクリントand Maido Onagos. But today,
Himo's voice shifted, still theatrical. But underneath of something yield pushed through like sunlight through a crack.
Today is the day the story we started writing. 10 years ago, which is its final chapter. And I want you to know, every phase was worth it. Every monster, every detour, every cold night and bad meal. And Haiter's truly terrible attempt at cooking fish at one time.
Haito said quietly.
The fish was fine.
Aizen said,
The fish was a war crime.
Haita said,
It was seasoned.
Aizen said.
So is poison.
Himu waited patiently for the fish boat to subside, which took longer than expected.
Ikui,
Himo said,
is that I will not trade a single day of this journey for anything, not for a throne, not for immortality, not for a worm without demons.
He paused and looked at each of them in turn. Frieren, who was still reading her score but whose hand had gone very still on the page. Aizu, who had stopped sharpening and was holding his axe like it weighed nothing. Haita, his pen was frozen midward in his journal. And Lab Princess, who was sitting on her baggy folded pike with tears already foaming because she knew what came after this perfect moment and they did not.
Himori smiled.
Shall we go save the world?
Nobody moved, not because he did not want to, but because the moment was too complete to break.
Then Aizen stood, shouldered his axe, and said,
Yes! That one word carried more weight than Himi's entire speech. Haika closed his journal and tucked his head behind his ear. Frieren rolled her scrolls and stored them with movements that looked casual but were precise enough to preserve ancient documents through a battle. Black Princess finally won the war against the pack by sitting on it until it compressed into submission. The fire went out. The camp disappeared as if it had never been. And 5 people began walking through the castle that had broken armies. The march took 4 hours. 4 hours of flat gray terrain, where nothing grew, and even the wind seemed reluctant to visit. Lab Princess walked beside Haita, who was quietly documenting everything in his journal while walking, when she had not known was possible until she saw him do it for the 3rd time that morning.
How are you writing?
She asked. Cool.
He showed her the page.
네, 3642 fine apples, Ipe honey cake, kuroki, adequate for Frieren, which means excellent for anyone else. Hemu gives speech. Number 412, attendance. 4 humans and 1 fire. Widow, still ash.
Life Princess nodded. You have been keeping count of his speeches?
Haita said.
3は must bear weakness.
Lab Princess fell into step with Frieren, who was walking at the reel with an expression of total concentration.
You are Kopoi.
Rakushitsu. Frieren said.
I have been preparing for talk years. What I am doing now is reviewing. There is a difference.
She paused.
The Demon King's magic, Rat's own principles, the Pidite, human magical day. Most Moto mages cannot counter it, because they like the reference framework. I have the framework.
She looked out Light Princess.
The advantage of leading a very long time is that eventually you have seen everything at least twice.
Black Princess said, this.
Frieren blinked.
You see everyone leave at least twice too.
Then she worked faster, and the conversation was over.
An hour from the gates, they passed the remnants of previous attempts. Armor scattered across the gray fields, swords rusted into the ground like iron flowers, the elational banner still flying from a
boy driven into the earth, its kingdoms crust breached by weather and time. La Princess counted 7 different banners. 7 kingdoms had sent their best, and all their best had left was colored cloth. Hime did not slow down, did not look at the fallen equipment. He kept his eyes on the gates and his pace steady and measured.
If you look down, you stumble.
He said.
If you look back, you stop. Forwards is the only direction no matters today.
The castle gates were 30 feet tall and made of something that was not quite metal and not quite stone. Obsidian fused with iron and threaded with veins of deep red that pulsed like slow heartbeats.
Up close, the polish of the walls showed reflections that were not quite right. Black Princess saw her own face, but the expression was different, sadder, or maybe older, as if the castle showed you not who you were, but who you would become. Shiritoe Keki. Kimo leaped on his reflection and straightened his collar.
Even my reflection was handsome.
He says, eyes are sad.
Your reflection
looks tired.
Himo said,
tired and handsome are not mutually exclusive.
The gates were still open. The same vast invitation they had seen from miles away.
The interior was visible. A brand entrance wall looked by floating arcs of blood red light. The floor was polished stone in an intricate geometric pattern that seemed to shift when you are not looking directly at it. Free stony notation.
No traps on the entrance itself.
She said,
She wants us inside. Every trap will be ahead of us, never behind. He designed this as a one-way journey.
Hiii drew his sword. The metallic ring echoed off the obsidian walls like a bell announcing their arrival.
Then it is rude to keep him waiting.
He stepped through the gates first because Hima always went first.
The entrance hall was enormous, easily the size of a cathedral.
The scene lost in darkness above the range of the floating lights.
Their footsteps echoed in patterns that did not match their pace, as if the hall was adding phantom steps to make them feel outnumbered.
Pillars of twisty obsidian lined both sides, and between them stood statues not of demons, but of humans. Heroes who had come before, carved in obsidian with perfect detail, their faces frozen in expressions of determination that had not saved them. La Princess recognized none of them, but Frieren stopped at one.
Commander Wilk,
She said quietly.
200 years here. Very brave. Very deaf.
The statue stared ahead with stone eyes that had once been real.
La Princess counted the statues.
27 heroes immortalized in obsidian in the Ankes Hall alone. That is either a trophy collection or a whining, she said. Himi said.
It is a tribute.
She looked at him.
He meant it.
The Demon King respects his Eternates. That is why documented. She honors the brave by remembering them.
He paused.
It is one of the reasons he is so difficult to hate. He does terrible things for reasons that are not terrible, and he respects the people who try to stop him.
La Princess said, that is the scariest thing you have ever said. Hail Nades.
I know.
A sob echoed from deeper the castle, not treasony musical. A low resonant hum that seemed to come from the walls themselves, as if the obsidian was singing.
Frieren's ears twitched.
Magical harmonics,
She said.
The castle is alive in a sense. It responds to the inhabitants' will. Right now, it is greeting us.
Haita said.
It sounds like a church organ built by someone who has heard of churches but never visited one.
The hum shifted to a slightly higher pitch, and the floating lights brightened. La Princess whispered.
Do you just get happier that we are here? Frieren-san.
Yes. It has been very quiet for a very long time. The castle was lonely.
Someone that made everything worse. They pressed forward through the entrance hall into a corridor that branched in three directions, left, right, and down. All three paths were well lit and apparently welcoming. No cover-ups, no armorers dripping, no skull decorations. 3. School decorations. The Demon King's castle was cleaner than most royal palaces. Frieren pointed down.
His throne room is at the deepest point, Ori's descent.
La Princess looked at the descending staircase. It was wide and well maintained, with a handrail. Is that a handrail? She said. I examined it.
Good craftsmanship.
He said.
Dote joins. Even the handrails in the evil castle meet Aizen's quality standards.
They descended 3 flights, and the castle became stranger with every level. A corridor whose walls were made of water that flowed upward, defying gravity with casual content. A room filled entirely
Why, with floating hourglasses, thousands of them, each one measuring a different amount of time, some nearly empty and some barely started. La Princess reached for one, and Frieren stopped her.
Those are lifetimes.
She said,
Each class measures someone's remaining time.
Black Princess looked at the hour rises with new horror.
Is my here? Frieren said,
No. Yours does not work like the others. Your time is not linear. Papas.
And despite everything, Black Princess almost left, because even ancient metaphysical magic acknowledged her lack.
The next room stopped everyone.
It was a library, but not a dark, sinister collection of forbidden knowledge. It was warm and well-lit and organized with the care of someone who genuinely loved books. Shelves reaching to a ceiling painted with constellations, reading chairs with warm cushions, a desk covered. Frieren walked to a shelf and pulled a book at random.
She opened it, read a page, and her expression flickered.
This is my Titison mana theory.
She said,
From 400 years ago. I thought every copy was lost.
Haida found a section on divine philosophy, annotated in the margins, with respectful disagreements. The Demon King was a scholar who did his homework. Hime phoned the history session and pulled a book titled
Heroes no Norton Campaign.
He flipped through it and found his own entry. His eyebrows rose.
It says here that I am quote, 立ちに effective. If somewhat 手つける を quote.
And it says, I quote, speak royally but carry decisive authority, unquote. That is accurate.
Haida found his entry.
Krog, possessi healing. Kutemonasu. This suggests divine favor also. His fish is reportedly terrible, unquote.
Haida closed the book firmly.
The fish was fine.
La Princess searched for her name but found nothing.
She was not in any book, and for once, that felt exactly right.
Deeper still, they found a room that should not have existed. A garden underground, lit by crystals in the ceiling that mimicked sunlight so perfectly that the flowers growing in neat rows did not know.
They were beneath a mile of Arcadian. Yeah.
These were not corrupted. These were perfect roses and lilies and orchids and species. Let Princess could not name, glowing in wan soil with tiny irrigation channels cut into the stone. Frieren stayed at the entrance and did not move for a very long time. He grows flowers,
she said, and her voice was strange, flat in the way it got when something had hit her harder than she expected.
The Demon King grows flowers!
The garden had a bench, a single skull bench beside a pond where small golden fish chuckled, and beside the bench a pair of gardening gloves so worn the fingertips had gone through. Someone eats this garden yekarani. Someone with hands that got dirty and gloves that wore out. Black Princess sat on the bench because her legs were tired and her heart was confused. Evil overlords were not supposed to have worn-out gardening gloves. They were supposed to sit on skull thrones and monologue about power. Himo sat next to her. He felt it too. The discomfort of fighting someone who tended roses between atrocities.
The play has not changed.
He said, Aizen found the tool rack at the garden's edge.
The tools were good quality, dwarf-made, based on the joint work, old but maintained.
He examined a small pruning knife and turned it over in his hands.
Menin granat.
He said,
60 years ago, maybe.
He put it back carefully. The only time Black Princess had ever seen Aizen be careful was something that was not either a weapon or a gift for a friend. Haita knelt by a hollow bed and touched the petal.
These are Magishina Arax,
she said.
Half of what grows here could save lives.
Frieren said sucking.
She just stood at the entrance with her arms at her sides, looking at a garden that should have been impossible and meant everything she was afraid it meant.
They did not linger. Himu lays them on the far side of the garden through a door that opened up to another descending staircase, the deepest one yet.
The walls here were no longer polished.
Raw obsidian showed through, like the castle was running out of pretense and becoming honest about what it was. A fortress built by something very old and very
Weifu andani arom. The humming in the walls grew louder, deeper resonance.
Black Princess could feel in her stelen.
Prince!
We are close. One more level.
And something in her voice shifted from propulsion to acceptance, the kind of acceptance that comes right before the hardest thing you have ever done. The final staircase ended on a pair of doors, smaller than the entrance gates, but more ornate dark wood banded with silver and carved with a scene that Black Princess wanted to stare out for 10 seconds to you. Understand? Imashite? It showed a demon and a human sitting across from each other at a table, playing a board game.
Neither one was lame.
The game had no end. It just went on and on across the surface of the doors, moves and countermeaks carved into wood that was older than kingdoms.
Himeo nicked at the Tobing and said,
That is how he sees it. Not a game. And we are the latest players.
Frieren said.
And like all games, it ends when someone decides to stop playing.
Hime put his hand on the door, then stopped. He turned to the group, and his face was not the sunrise smile or the heroic mask.
It was just Hamel,
a man standing in front of friends who had followed him for 10 years and never once asked why.
I need to say Sunken before we go in,
he said. And for once, his voice was not performing.
Whatever happens in that room, I want us to know that my life's greatest achievement is not the battles we won or the people we saved. Is that all 5 of you are standing here. Health. Life. Still putting out with my speeches. Tsugi.
He took a breath.
I love you. All of you, even Aizen, who will pretend he did not hear this.
Aizen said.
Heard it.
His voice was roughed in a way that had nothing to do with gravel. Black Princess felt the tears hit before she could stop them.
She was not even part of this story, not really.
She was a visitor, a tourist in someone else's legend. But standing here watching a hero tell his memory, he loved them before walking into the worst fight of their lives. She understood why the flower had brought her here. Not to help, not to change any Inky, but to witness, because some moments are too important to happen beside someone who will remember them from the outside, someone who will carry them back to a world where they can echo.
She wiped her eyes.
Sorry, she said. Hemo said.
Never apologize for feeling. It means you are paying attention.
Himu pushed the doors open. They swung inward without sound.
Beyond them, the throne room waited vast and dark and humming with a power so dense, the air itself felt heavy.
At the far end, a shape sat upon a throne of black stone, still and patient and radiating the particular silence of something that has been expecting you.
The Demon King raised his head, and in the blood-red light of floating orbs, his eyes found them, found all 5 of them.
La Princess felt your lap tawastate.
Ingo. Time hiccuped around her, skipped 1 beat, and in that frozen fraction of a second, she saw the Demon King's expression, and it was not anger or cruelty or madness. It was recognition.
Welcome. Welcome.
He said, and his voice was the saddest sound she had ever heard. Act Sam, the Black Citadel, the throne room of the Demon King, was not a room. It was a cathedral of silence. The ceiling was so high, the floating lights could not reach it, only darkness above, and the walls were lined with the same mirror-polished obsidian. But here the reflections showed nothing. Not the people standing in the room. Not the furniture, just empty black glass reflecting an accents. As if the room existed in a place where mirrors had decided.
Dear, there was nothing worth showing.
The Demon King's throne was carved from a single piece of obsidian, so dark it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It was not ornamented, not decorated with skulls or dews or the traditional sinicores of evil royalty. It was simple, almost austere chair built by someone who had been sitting in it for a very long time and had long since stopped caring about aesthetics.
The being on the throne matched it.
Tall, angular, meat-fissured, that were almost human, but arranged with a position that no human face had ever achieved. Symmetry so perfect,
It crossed into unsettling.
He wore no armor, no chrome, just plain dark robes that might have been black or might have been the same color as the throne.
It was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. His hands rested on the armrests with the stillness of someone who had not moved in years, perhaps decades.
His eyes were the only feature that betrayed what he was. Gold eyesies with vertical pupils that caught the red light and holded the eyes of something that had been looking at the world since before.
Hiii knew it was being watched.
You are Himmel's party.
The Demon Queen sat, and his voice was not what Love Princess expected.
She had expected Tanda Groove, the piatico boss of a villain, delivering a monologue.
Instead, he sounded like a librarian, measured and precise and faintly tired.
I have followed your journey, all 10 years of it. I went. You are the most interesting group to attempt this in several centuries.
He tilted his head.
And you brought a guest.
His gold eyes found Log Princess, and she felt her bones vibrate.
You do not belong to any time.
He said.
Interesting.
Himo stepped forward, his sword drawn, but held at his side, not threatening, just pleasant the way a diplomat might carry credentials.
We are here to end the war.
He said.
The Demon King regarded him with an expression that might have been respect or might have been the patient attention of a cat watching something move.
An oath.
He said.
You have been walking toward this room since you were 17 years old. I have watched you grow from a boy with a borrowed sword to a man who carries the hope of nations on his shoulders without bending. It has been remarkable.
He paused.
I will miss observing you.
That is nice surrender.
Frieren said from behind Hime's shoulder, her voice flat and precise.
The Demon King looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. The recognition deepened, became personal.
Frieren. Andame.
He said, her name like he was reading a title from an ancient book.
You and I are the only ones in this room who understand what time really means. How many of these hopeful heroes have you watched age? And how many times have you told yourself the next one will be different?
Frieren's jaw tightened, but she said nothing.
I have been alive for 1,200 years. You have been alive for longer. And yet you stand behind a mortal man. Why?
Because she asked me to...
Freya said, and the simplicity of the answer rendered in the room like a drift stone into still water.
The Demon King was quiet for 3 heartbeats.
Then he said,
Fascinating.
Mistook from his throne.
the movement was not aggressive. It was the slow, careful rising of someone who had been seated for a very long time. His full height was not monstrous, perhaps 7 feet, but the weight of his presence made the room contract around him.
I would not fight you.
He said.
Not yet. First, I want you to understand what it is you are destroying. Will you let me show you?
Himo looked at Frieren.
Frieren looked at Eisen. Eisen looked at nobody because he was already watching the Demon King with the focused attention of a dwarf, measuring a threat's exact dimensions. Haida said Kaiki.
Knowledge is not a weapon, unless you let it be.
Himo sheathed his sword.
Shues.
The Demon King raised one hand, and the walls of the throne room dissolved. Not crumpled, not shattered. They simply opened like pages of a book, revealing rooms beyond rooms, spaces that had been hidden in behind the obsidian. And what they showed was not an army or a weapon or a pit of tormented souls. It was a city, an entire functioning city felt inside the shadow of the castle.
Streets radiated from the throne room in concentric rings lit by the same warm crystals as the garden. And on those streets, demons lived, not the snarling, corrupted creatures the party had fought for 10 years,
but demons in their natural state, looking through marketplaces, reading in libraries, teaching children in what appeared to be schools. The Demon King's domain was not a mandatory fortress. It was a civilization hidden on the road away from the world.
the demons down here were not soldiers. They were citizens.
You see soldiers when you fight demons on the surface.
The Demon King said.
You see corruption and violence and cruelty. And that is real. I built that army. I armed them. I sent them.
He gestured at the city below.
But this is also real. 300,000 demons live here. They have families and trades and arguments about whose bread recipe is better, and children who are afraid of the dark.
Kirikta Himo.
The question is not whether demons are capable of evil. We obviously are. The question is whether you are willing to destroy the capacity for this, to also destroy the capacity for that.
Nobody spoke.
The city flumed below them with the sounds of life. Voices, industry, a child laughing somewhere in the distance.
Cat Princess stood at the edge of the revealed balcony and looked down at a street where a demon was hanging laundry between 2 buildings. The sheets were white and fluttering in some underground breeze, and the demon was humming a melody while working. She thought about every demon. She had seen the party fight and tried to reconcile this image with those, the Zomestil and the monstrous, the laundry and the war. Himu stood beside her, and his expression was the hardest she had ever seen. It not angry hard.
The way a decision is hard.
Is this man to make us hesitate?
Eisen said.
And his voice was not accusatory.
It was genuine. The Demon King looked at the dwarf with something approaching respect.
It is meant to give you information.
He says.
What you do with information is your choice. I had killed millions of your people. That is a fact. These people exist. That is also a fact. Both facts are true at the same time.
Eisen processed this with the efficiency of someone who preferred problems with physical solutions, then said,
You can stack the wall yourself. You couldn't have called back your armies. Arida, oketta.
The Demon King said.
Yes.
Eisen said.
Then this is an argument for peace you chose not to make. You chose war and boot the garden. That is net philosophy. That is hypocrisy.
And the room went very quiet.
Haito stepped forward with his staff, not raised in combat, but held across his body like a bridge between them. May I ask a question?
The Demon King inclined his head.
Haita-san, do the citizens still know about the Surface Army, about the war, about what you do in our name?
The Demon King was silent for 5 seconds.
Some suspect,
He said.
most do not.
Haito nodded slowly. Then you have built a paradise on a foundation of secrets and blood, and you are asking us to admire the architecture while ignoring the foundation.
The Demon King said,
I am asking you to see the full picture.
Haiku-sen!
I see it. And the picture include millions your armies killed to keep the city safe. Their families had loaded too.
The walls crushed again! The city vanished behind Oshidian.
The throne room returned to its custodial silence.
The Demon King settled back onto his throne with the measured movements of someone who had expected every word he had heard and is moving to the next phase of a very old conversation.
You are all very interesting.
He says.
Most parties reach this point, and either attack immediately or surrender to doubt. You have done neither.
He looked at Frieren.
I suspect that is your influence, the elf who has seen enough of time to know that most truths have a second truth hiding behind them. Now I will ask you something.
The Demon King said, and this time his voice carried an edge that had not been there before, not threat urgency.
Why do humans value feeling so highly, when you cannot even prove it exists?
Frieren's hand title on her staff.
I have studied your species for 1200 years.
既婚じぎりって
I had observed every emotion. You perform love, grief, joy, rage, and I can replicate each one flawlessly.
He paused.
Demons do not feel. Remember that. It is our greatest weapon, and your greatest vulnerability. Every demon who ever asked for mercy was performing a script. Every demon who ever asked. Including this conversation.
Frieren said, and her voice was ice. The Demon King tilted his head.
That is the question, is it not? After 1200 years of perfect mimicry, how would I know the difference between feeling something and performing it so well that the performance becomes indistinguishable from the real thing?
He looked at his own hands.
I tend a garden. I read books. I built a city for my people. Are those the actions of someone who feels nothing? Or the actions of someone who has performed feeling for so long that the performance developed its own momentum?
He looked up.
I genuinely do not know. And that uncertainty is the most human thing about me.
The silence that followed was the loudest thing, like Princess had ever heard. It pressed against her ears and filled the space between them like water filling a sinking room. She looked at Frieren and saw the elk's composure crack, just a hairline, barely visible, but there. Because the Demon King had not asked a question about demons, he had asked a question about Frieren, an elf, who lived so long that humans accused her of not feeling, who had watched decades pass like seasons and attended funerals like appointments, who was only now, after 1,000 years, beginning to understand what Grook meant. The Demon King was not attacking you with the question. He was holding up a mirror.
Friends.
Himu said her name like an anchor thrown into deep water, and she caught it.
She bleeped, and the crock sealed, and she was herself again, composure restored by 3 syllables from immortal man who would not live long enough to understand what he had just saved her from.
Frieren looked at the Demon King and said,
音に風をね。 doesn't it change the body count? 1200 years of mimicking compassion and it's Ucho's worth. Ichidu fool, that must be worse.
The Demon King nodded.
Yes. It would, wasn't it?
La Princess had been quiet through all of this, standing behind the party where she belonged, the audience in a room full of players.
But the Demon King's gold eyes found her again.
And you,
He says,
the one who does not belong to any timeline, who stutters between moments like a song played on a broken instrument. What do you think?
She stared at him. Her mouth opened and no sound came out. Not because of lag, because the actual Demon King was asking her opinion and she had none that felt worthy of the moment. Then she said, I think feeling is a choice, not a state. And I think you stopped choosing a long time ago.
The Demon King studied her for a very long time, then said,
Perhaps you are right.
He stood again, slow this time, and raised both hands. The floating herbs of blood-red light multiplied, filling the throne room with an ethereal glow that made everything look like it was bleeding.
I have shown you my home. And so you my home.
He said,
I have asked my question. Your answers were better than most.
His voice shifted, the librarian told, dropping away, and something fast and cold taking its place like a mountain emerging from fog.
But an answer is not a solution. And a solution is why you gain.
The air pressure in the room doubled. Black Princess's gears popped.
So let it solve this.
He said,
Each breathe.
The way our kind has always solved things.
And the throne room began to change. The floor spread apart in geometric pate zaxiliad tiles rising and falling to create a landscape within the room. Pillars yatte konnakuren, both we company. The throne room was reshaping itself into an arena.
The Demon King stood at his center, and his plain robes dissolved into something else. Armor that was not metal. Darkness that was not shadow. A shell of concentrated magical energy that clung to his beat.
Or like a seconds, skin rays at night. His scald eyes brightened until they were twin suns set in a face that no longer presented to be anything but what it was. Agent, alien, and powerful beyond any scale, Lamp Princess had a reference for. Himo drew his sword, and the blaze sang a note that hung in the air like a challenge and a prayer. He looked at his team, and something passed between all four of them. No words, no signals. Just 10 years of fighting together compressed into a single glance that said everything. Aizen moved left. Haita moved right. Frieren lifted off the ground. And Himo charged forward, not running, advancing with the measured pace of a hero who understood that the first step of the last battle should be taken deliberately. But the Demon Queen raised one finger, just one, and said,
Not yet.
Himo stopped.
The castle still ships. The arena is not complete.
He looked at the body with an expression that Black Princess cannot read.
You have until the room stops moving to prepare. I suggest you use the time.
Frieren immediately began layering defensive spells, golden situ appearing in the air around her like rings of a planet. Haita planted his staff, and a dome of divine light expanded to cover the party. Aizen checked his axe, eyed one time.
Himo closed his eyes when stood perfectly still, breathing, centering, becoming whatever he needed to become.
Black Princess looked at the reshaping room and realized she had no rule here.
She cannot fight the Demon King.
She could not support with magic. She did not think or heal or strategize. She was a princess, a lagging, buffering, chronically displaced princess who had stumbled into the most important battle in a generation and had absolutely nothing useful to contribute. The iron chop burned on her wrist.
stay.
You
do not need to be useful to be necessary.
She pressed her back against a pillar and watched the people she loved prepare for something she could only witness.
The arena finished forming, a circular space 200 feet across. Pillars at regular intervals, the floor, a mosaic of dark and light stone that pulsed faintly with magical energy.
The Demon King stood at the center, and his shadow stretched in all directions simultaneously, which should have been impossible. But at this point, impossible was just the baseline. The floating lights gathered above him in a halo of blood-red illumination, and the humming of the castle walls resolved into a single sustained note, deep and resonant, the sound of 1200 years. Vibrating at its fundamental frequency.
One more thing.
The Demon King said, and he raised a hand toward Black Princess.
She flinched, but nothing happened. A barrier materialized around her beard, transparent but solid. She pressed her palm against it. Palm!
This will keep you safe.
He said?
You are not a combatant.
You are weakness. Weaknesses should survive to tell the story.
It was the most considerate thing a villain had ever done, and it made her deeply uncomfortable.
Himu glanced at her and nodded, confirming that the barrier was acceptable, that she was where she needed to be, the eye at the center of what was about to become a storm.
Frieren spoke one word in ancient Elven, and the sigil around her flared. Haitas divine do suritobaiti fu combatten shiki. Icing planted his feet, and the ground within him cracked from the sheer commitment of his stance. And Himmel opened his eyes.
Whatever he had been searching for in that moment of silence, he had found it. His face was calm.
His grip on the sword was light, relaxed.
The technique of a swordsman, they had moved past tension into pure clarity.
The Demon King looked at them, and for the first time, discomposure shifted, not fear, not yet, but the focused attention of someone who recognized that this fight would be different from all the other...
Essie.
You have grown, Hill.
The Demon King said, his voice carrying across the arena with the weight of 12 centuries.
When I first marked you as a potential threat, you were a boy in the sword too large for his grip, and a smile that makes seasoned warriors underestimate you. That was your greatest weapon, not the blade. The smile. It meant people believed the world could be saved by kindness. I just you. And the remarkable thing is...
He paused.
You made that belief real.
Henry's sword caught the red light and threw it back like a mirror. He said,
I do not need it. If it is on Ebitak, I am not done yet.
The Demon King said,
we shall see.
The rune went still.
The humming stopped. The lights froze. Even the desk in the air seemed to pause. Every element of the throne room held its breath, as if the castle itself understood that the next second would determine the fate of the world. Black Princess felt her like power stirred in her chest, not activating, just restless, aware that time itself was about to be burnt and broken by forces that dwarfed her small talent.
She pressed her hands flat against the barrier and watched and waited and tried to remember every detail because someone had to.
Then the Demon King moved.
And the word...
At sunrise, move.
Was insufficient for what happened.
He crossed the distance between the throne and Hemel
in a fraction of a heartbeat, not running, not teleporting, simply existing in one place and then existing in another, as in the space between had be. He politely asked to step aside.
his fist connected with Himmel's raised sword, and the sound was not a clang. It was a detonation, a shockwave of force that cracked every pillar in the arena and blew Lac Princess's hair back even behik.
Nu de beria.
Himmel slid back out 50 feet, his boots carving furrows in stone, his arms shaking from the impact, but his grip held and his smile returned.
There you are.
He said, and the battle for the world began. Act you the dronic lies, but the battle did not begin. He must counterattack, pass through the Demon King like a blade through smoke. The figure dissolved, reformed at the shrine, and sat back down.
No. Not yet.
He said.
And the arena froze, not let princesses freeze. Something older, colder.
A pose imposed on reality by a being who had spent 1,200 years learning to edit the rules of existence.
The party stood locked in the autostances like insects in amber.
Only their eyes could move, and those eyes found the Demon King watching them with something that was either flirtation or chief.
I told you I wanted you to understand.
The Demon King said, and he rose from the throne and walked among them, stepping between the frozen heroes like a curator walking through his own museum.
He stopped our eyes first, studying the dwarf's face from inches away.
You are the most honest among them?
He said.
You called me a hypocrite, and you were correct. I built a garden in a fortress, and grew flowers over mass graves. That is exactly what hypocrisy looks like.
He moved on. Aizen's eyes struck him with the intensity of a predator being circled by prey that did not know the hierarchy was wrong. He stopped at Haita.
The priest.
Hisa.
You asked if my people knew about the war. That question cost me more than any spell could, because the answer changed me, and I have not felt shame in 600 years.
He reached out and adjusted Haida's frozen collar with a gentleness that seemed obscene given the circumstances.
You believe in a goddess who demands honesty above all virtues. I have demanded silence from 300,000 people in the name of protecting them. You and I are more alike than either of us would admit. The only difference is your secrets are called faith, and mine are called lies.
He reached Frieren and stopped. Kiden na tao odo. They were almost the same height, two ancient beings looking at each other across a divide that had nothing to do with species and everything to do with choices.
We are the last conversation in this room.
He said to her.
When they are all booms and dust, you and I will still be here, thinking about this day. I have 1,200 years of memories, and this moment will outlast all of them.
His gold eyes were very close to her silver ones.
Does time, Maeve?
He asked.
Or does repetition make it indistinguishable from performance? You know the answer better than anyone alive.
The question hit Frieren like a physical impact. Black Princess could see it happen. Even through the barrier could see the elf's frozen Kapoja fracture at the fault line the Demon King had found with surgical precision. Because this was the question. The one that lived in the space between Frieren's 1,000-year existence and her inability to understand what she felt after decades after feeling it.
Was her greed for Hinnel real?
Or was it the 1,000-year accumulation of pattern recognition that had learned to simulate grief so well that the simulation and the reality became indistinguishable?
She could not answer,
and her silence was the loudest thing in the room, louder than the frozen battle, louder than the Demon King's voice, louder than her own heartbeat.
The Demon King released the time freed not all at once but in layers, like peeling pages off a book.
First, sound returned.
Then color deepened. Then gravity reasserted itself with a small apologetic lush. The body stumbled forward its motion. Aizen's axe swing を見ていてあっちへ Haita Sporia flickered and restabilized.
Himu's charge ended in 3 confused steps. Only Frieren did not move.
She stood exactly where the freeze had caught her, her staff at her side, her eyes unfocused in a way that meant she was thinking so hard the external world had been temporarily deprioritized.
What she did?
Himmel's voice was still, not the theatrical kind, the real kind, the kind that comes from a man who has spent 10 years learning which threads require smiles and which require swords.
The Demon King returned to his throne.
I asked her a question.
Kisef.
The same question I have been asking myself for centuries. I did not touch her. I did not cast a spell. I simply showed her a mirror she had been avoiding.
Himoyutta Frieren. Friari. He said, "Are you alright?"
She did not respond.
She was somewhere very far away, lost in 1,000 years of memories being re-examined under new and terrible light. Like Princess pressed against the barrier, watching Frieren stand motionless while the rest of the party gathers around her.
This was wrong. Not the battle kind of wrong, the shuttle kind.
The Demon King had not attacked them with magic or force. He had attacked them with philosophy, with a question so perfectly targeted at Frieren's deepest vulnerability that it had done something no spell could. It had made her doubt the foundation of everything she had built in the last decades. The friendships, the quest, the slow, painful process of learning to care. What if none of it was real? What if she was just very good at pretending? Aizen did something unexpected. He walked into Frieren and stood directly in front of her, blocking her view of the Demon King.
He did not speak.
He simply held up his axe, the same axe he had carried for 40 years, and looked at her.
The axe was scarred and repaired, and sharpened 1,000 times, and it was still the same. Axe still the thing. It had been made to be regardless of how many times its surface had changed.
Frieren looked at the axe and looked at Aizen, and the metaphor landed with the precision of a blade thrown by a master.
Whatever she was, however her feelings had formed, she was still Frieren, still the thing she had chosen to be.
Her eyes cleared.
Thank you.
She said, Aizen said,
Yes.
and stepped aside.
The Demon King watched this exchange, and his expression shifted not dramatically. His face did not do dramatic, but the angles of his composure adjusted like a building settling on a new foundation.
Interesting.
He said,
A swath with an axe undid 1,200 years of philosophical calibration in 4 seconds.
He looked at Aizen with genuine curiosity.
Aizen says,
Wolves are complicated. 君は things are simple.
The Demon King considered this for 5 full seconds.
Yes. Yeah.
He said,
I suppose they are.
There was a pause.
Then the Demon King said something nobody expected.
I think I envy you.
Like Princess Log Tower have been pigeons is the time-free small bursts of temporal static that made her vision skip like a scratched record. She had been ignoring it because the alternative was acknowledging that her body was reacting to the Demon King's magic, the way a tuning fork reacts to a quotidian organ.
But now it sparked hard, a flash of frozen time that lasted half a second.
And in that half second, she saw something The Demon King centuries ago, younger, sitting in a room that was not yet a castle, alone, trying to make a flower grow in dark soil and failing over and off.
Ah, and the expression on his face was not the measure composure of the being on the throne. It was Lorinas. The vision broke, and Black Princess staggered against the barrier. Hamiono desu. Are you alright? She opened her mouth to say yes, and instead said...
He was alone. Everyone turned to her, including the Demon King.
He was alone when he started.
She said,
The garden, the city, the flower, he built all of it
because he was alone and he did not know what else to do.
The Demon King looked at her for a very long time, his cold eyes unreadable.
You saw that?
He said, Koyosuke.
Your temporal sense is more refined than I thought.
Then he looked away.
The flowers came first.
He said,
I built everything else around them, trying to make them mean something.
Frieren's voice cut through the room like a blade through fog. Recovered sharp herself again.
Meaning does not excuse the cost.
She says, you are only, so you going to Suburasaso. That is not evil. But you also send armies that destroy civilizations. Nice. You cannot show us a garden and ask us to forget the graveyard.
The Demon King inclined his head.
I am not asking you to forget. I am asking you to understand that the graveyard and the garden grew from the same root. And if you destroy me, you destroy both.
Frieren said. Frioyon said, I know. And the two words carried the weight of someone who had spent 1,000 years understanding exactly what destruction costs.
The Demon King descended the steps of his reshaped arena slowly, each step deliberate. Each step accompanied by a shift in the room's magical pressure.
He stopped 10 paces from Himmel and looked at him.
Really looked. The way you look at something you want to remember.
You will end me today.
He said,
I have seen enough futures to know that your party is the first in 1,200 years. With the correct combination of strength, intelligence, faith, endurance.
He looked at each of them as he named their quality.
And heart.
His eyes returned to Himi.
You are the heart. Without you, they are four strangers with weapons. With you, they are something I cannot defeat. A family.
Then let us begin.
He said, and his voice was neither angry nor kind. It was the voice of a man fulfilling a promise he had made to the world 10 years ago, a promise that had cost him his youth and his peace and every quiet morning he might have had. And he was keeping it anyway. Because that is what Himmel did.
He kept promises.
The Demon King nodded.
One final question.
He said,
Are you afraid?
Himmel said,
Terrified.
The honest answer, the one he had given Love Princess under the stars.
The Demon King said,
Good. Yeah. Wetera. The brave ones always are.
And the time for talking was over. But before the first blow, the Demon King raised his hand one more time, and the arena revealed its last secret. The obsidian walls became transparent, and beyond them the castle's hidden city was visible again. 300,000 demons going about their lives, unaware that above them the fate of their exist. Answer was about to be decided.
Whatever happens,
The Demon King said,
they did not choose this. I chose it for them. If you win, the castle will fall, the city will surface, and they will need someone to tell them why.
He looked at Black Princess.
You witness. Remember that part too.
Black Princess felt the weight of that. settle on her shoulders like a crown she had never asked for. The Demon King was not asking her to fight.
He was asking her to see, to hold in her memory the fullness of what was about to happen. Not just the heroism, but the cost. Not just the victory, but the grief. The 300,000 lives that would
wake up tomorrow on a world that no longer had the framework their entire existence had been built on.
She nodded.
Because what else do you say when the demon Cree of all people trusts you with the truth? I will remember.
She said.
Everything! He's it. Even the parts that are hard.
She said.
Especially those.
The voice went opaque again. The arena sealed itself, and the room contracted around the combatants like a fist closing.
5 against 1, except the 1 was something that had shattered armies and outlived empires, and the 5 were mortal in every way that mattered except the elf, who was mortal in the way that matterly.
She would remember this forever.
Which was its own kind of dying. La Princess backed into the corner of her barrier and pressed her palms together, not praying. She did not know who to pray to, just holding her own hands because she needed something to hold. Act 5, the silence before nobody moved. The arena hummed with potential energy like a bow drawn back past its limit. The Demon King stood with his arms on his sides and his gold eyes moving between the 4 combatants with the measured calculation of someone running mathematics too complex for spoken language.
He was assessing them, not their strengths. He knew their strengths. He had watched them for 10 years.
He was assessing their formation, their eye contact patterns, the microscopic body language that said which one would move first and which direction they would move.
He was reading them like she will the loading screen, waiting for the right moment to resolve.
Himo held his ground, sword angled across his body in a guard position she had seen him use 100 times.
But his feet were wrong, not planted for defense, spaced for a forward launch.
The guard was a lie, a beautiful one designed to invite an attack into a space where him would no longer be standing by the time the blue arrived.
10 years of swordsmanship.
Distilled into a posture that said,
Come here.
Rayo Mini. The Demon King sa, of course me did.
Deceptive stance.
He said.
You learned that from Laufen.
Himo's eye twitched.
You have done your research.
The Demon King said.
I do not need to research. I watched you practice it 4 years ago.
Frieren floated 3 feet off the ground behind Himo's left shoulder, her standard combat position, artillery support with a clear line of fire. But her spousal were different from any rat princess had seen before.
Not the clean golden rings of her battle magic.
These were old, dense, layered so thick the air around them whipped like Hiii.
She had been preparing something for 30 years, she had said, and looking at those Zijus like Princess believed it.
They pulsed with a depth of power that made the arena feel shallow, as if Frieren's magic came from a well, so deep it reached through the floor of reality into whatever lay beneath.
Eisen gripped his axe two-handed, feet planted, center of gravity dropped so low his knees were bent at angles that would give anyone else cramps.
But Eisen's build was essentially architectural. He was not standing on the ground. He was part of it, a geological feature with an axe and an attitude.
His role was clear.
Anchor. Pull!
The thing that did not move
when everything else did.
The Demon King lifted him and said,
I have broken dwarven shield walls before.
Not this one.
The Demon King nodded.
Haita planted his staff, and the divine dawn overhead peekened into something with visible texture, golden light braided with silver threads that pulsed in time with his breathing. He was the least visibly dramatic of the four, but like Princess had been watching him for days now and she understood. Haita was the glue, the reason they could fight with reckless courage because in there stood a man who would heal what was broken and shield what was exposed and pray for what was beyond his reach. His fate was not decorative. It was structural, the foundation the entire party stood on.
Without him, they were two individuals.
With him, they were an army.
30 seconds passed in silence. 30 seconds while 5 beings stood in the room underground and the fate of the world balanced on the exact moment when one of them decided that 30 seconds was low.
Inchi ides. Black Princess counted heartbeats. His were too fast. The Demon Kings were invisible. Himmels were steady, a metronome of wind. Then Hima exhaled and said 3 words that changed everything.
Chloe. Kill him.
And the elf, who had been holding back for 30 years, who had prepared for this moment since before Mad Princess was born, who had calculated and recalculated and verified every variable, opened her Hiii.
Yes, white, and the world turned white.
What Frieren unleashed was not a spell in any conventional sense. It was 30 years of study, compressed into a single gesture. Her hand extended, palm open, fingers spread, and from that palm came everything, a beam of magical force so concentrated the air itself. Hey! Irageza Waiponat! The arena floor split along its path. The figures it passed disintegrated ita pado. The obsidian walls cracked, and the whole castle shuddered as if a giant had punched it. The beam hit the Demon King dead center, and the impact was not a sound, it was a silence, a void where sound used to be, as if the force was so absolute it had killed the air that would have carried... Nice! The dust cleared. The Demon King stood exactly where he had been standing, one hand raised, palm facing Frieren, a barrier of pure darkness absorbing her beam like a sponge absorbing water. But his fruit had moved, pished-bashed 3 inches into the shown floor. 3 inches from a being that had not been moved by anything in centuries. Frieren's spell had forced the most powerful demon alive to brace. His gold eyes found her through the fading light, and something in them changed. Not fear, not yet, but the recalculation of someone who had assumed the outcome was certain and was now revising that as... Sashi.
You have been hiding this,
he said, and for the first time his measure caposha carried the undertone of genuine surprise. Frieren said nothing. She simply raised her other hand, and the second beam was stronger than the first. The Demon King caught it, but the stream showed dark veins of force crept across his barrier. His feet caused Kippa fellows in stone. And in that moment of divided attention, Himmel moved not from the friend where the Demon King expected him, from below. Himmel had dropped to the floor during the flash and slid across the polished stone on his back with his sword extended upward. The blade found the gap between Barrier and the Demon King's body and bit into his side. The Demon King's roar was not rage. It was surprise. Black blood sprayed across the arena floor and sizzles where it landed. He swept his arm, and a wave of force launched Himmel 20 feet through the air. But Aizen was there, standing where Henry would land, braced like a wall. Heyman had Aizen's raised axe handle and bounced off it like a genius off a boy, converting the throw into a control spin that brought him back to his feet, facing the enemy.
Did you plan that?
Lab Princess whispered from behind the barrier. Nobody answered because of ordinary. Haito's light surged to heal a cut on Remy's shoulder that had opened during the slide.
First blood to the heroes, but the Demon King's wind sealed in seconds, black blood reversing direction and flowing back into the cut like a film played backward.
He looked at the healed wound and then at Himmel's blade.
That sword has properties I did not account for.
She said, and then he attacked. Not the testing popping strikes of their practice exchange. The you thing.
One moment, he was at this room. The next, he was everywhere.
Darkness erupted across the arena in blades of shadow that cut through pillars and floor and there. Eisen blocks 3 with his knocks. The impacts drew him backward, his beats leaving changes in the stone.
He held, but his arms trembled with the effort.
Hiii's barrier absorbed 2 shadow blades and cracked golden fractures, spreading across the dome like ice under pressure. He slammed his staff down and poured more power into the structure, his face tight with concentration, his lips moving in constant prayer that was not decorative but functional, each word reinforcing ki를.
히바리아바이 미줄보 이마스.
The third shadow blade shattered the dome entirely. Hiii staggered for 1 heartbeat.
The party was exposed and the Demon King seized it.
A lance of darkness shot towards Frieren. Frieren deflected it with a flick of her fingers, but the deflisco cost her a sigil ring. One of Fortutier Preparashis Krompo Golden Dust.
The Demon King fought like something that have been practicing for 1200 years against every combat Sai Himune species had ever invented.
He adapted in real time. When Himu finally crest, the Demon King was already moving to counter the actual attack from the right.
When Eisen charged, he dissolved into shadow and reformed behind the dwarf.
When Frieren launched worries of precision spells, he raised barriers that were specifically calibrated to her magic as if he had studied her particular frequency.
And
he had watched her for centuries.
He knew her magic like a musician knows a rival's composition every note predicted before it was played. But the party had something the Demon King's 1200 years of observation could not fully account for. Incarnation born from trust. Himu shouted a word that meant nothing in any language, a code the party had invented in year 3 of their journey, and instantly all 4 of them moved in a pattern the Demon King had never seen be. Koze had never existed before.
Eisen threw his axe,
not at the Demon King but at the ceiling. The axe hit the crystal formation and sent a shower of razor shards raining down.
The Demon King raised a dome to deflect them, and in that fraction of destruction, Hiii slammed his staff into the ground, and a pillar of divine light erupted directly beneath the Demon King's feet.
The light caught him, held him divine energy warping around a body that had never been touched by prayer.
The Demon King strained against it, and the pillar cracked, but it held for 3 seconds.
3 seconds was enough. Frieren used all 3 seconds. She poured everything. She had prepared every sigil, every layered spell, every year of her 20-year arsenal into a single focus point. The spell had a name, but names were irrelevant.
What mattered was the light.
White and absolute, a sun compressed to the size of a fist and launched at the speed of will. The impact broke the world or felt like it. The arena floor shattered outward from the point of contact. Boots collapsed!
The ceiling split, and real sky appeared through the cracked nightfall stars, visible through the dusk and falling stone.
Black Princess barrier held through the shockwave,
but she felt its flex. The Demon King's barrier, protecting her, strained against the force of Frieren's attack, like a window in a hurricane. For one impossible second, it looked like the fight was over. Frieren's light consumed everything at the impact point, and nothing could exist within that absolute brilliance.
Then the light died, and the Demon King was still standing barely.
His armor of darkness was gone. His robes were ash.
His body was visible for the first time, gray skin lined with black wings that pulsed with fading power 1200 years, written on a form that looked almost fragile without its defenses.
One arm hung at an angle that suggested it was broken.
One of his gold eyes had gone dark, but the other bone by the
He looked at Frieren and sat through a jaw that was not entirely intact.
Now, I am afraid.
And then he gathered everything he had left and the real fight began. What came next was not combat.
It was survival.
The Demon King abandoned strategy and unleashed 1200 years of accumulated magical rage. The arena dissolved. The castle walls fell away.
They fought in the skeleton of the fortress, now under open sky, on broken ground that shifted and crumpled with every impact.
Fumi took a blow to his ribs that sent him spinning into a collapsed wall. Haito barrier reformed 3 times and broke 3 times. Aizen was bleeding from a gash across his band that Haito was trying to heal while maintaining defenses. Frieren alone remained untouched, but her face showed the coast pale and drawn and burning through mana reserves at a rate that could not be sustained.
It has to be na.
Hemi said, pulling himself up from the ripple with his sword still in his grip.
His ribs were cracked, maybe broken.
His breathing was shallow and wet, but his eyes were clear, and his voice carried the authority of a man who had led a party through 10 years of war and never once made the wrong call at the moment it mattered most.
Icing. Hodef. Haita. Elgini Habt. Fly. One more. Final positions.
The party moved without hesitation. Aizen did exactly what I always did. The impossible thing that nobody asked for. Because they did not think to ask.
He threw his axe aside, the weapon that had defined him for 40 years. He threw it away, and he charged the Demon King with nothing but his hands.
The Demon King swung a blade of darkness that should have cut Aizen in half.
Aizen cut it! Bare hands gripping a sword made of pure destructive energy. His palms sealed and smoked. The pain must have been beyond words, but his grip did not loosen, because Aizen had decided the Demon King was not going to move, and when Aizen decided something, the laws of physics submitted a 4. My complaint got rejected. Haita planted his staff and stopped playing for defense. He prayed for one thing, light.
Not barriers, not healing, just light.
Pew! Unconducted white radiance poured from his staff like dawn, breaking inside a room. The light did not damage the Demon King, but it illuminated every shadow he attempted to summon. His darkness-based attacks withered in the brilliance. His shadow teleportation failed. He became visible, solid, unable to phase or dodge or dissolve, trapped in his physical form by a priest who had decided that the most important prayer of his life was not for protection but for truth. Frieren dug into Roselle's. She did not know she had. Past her 30-year preparations, past her standard combat allay, past the power she used for daily magic and the power she kept for emergencies, and the power she had looking from everyone for thousands. And years. She reached into the deepest will of her being, the place where a millennium of existence had compressed raw mana into something that was not just magical force, but memory. Every spell she had ever cast, every sunset she had ever watched, every flower she had ever been given, she pulled it all up and held it in her hands. And it was warm and bright and completely terrified. Angie! Himowa not paused. His body could not do fast anymore. His ribs screamed, and his knee buckled on the second step, and he caught himself and kept going. He ran the way someone runs when everything in their body is telling them to stop, and everything in their heart is saying,
One more. Just one more step.
The Demon King saw him coming, tried to raise a defense, but Aizen hurled his arms, and Hyder's light burned away his shadows, and Frieren's gathered power left the air itself around his body.
3 people creating a window of opportunity with everything they had and Himmel. Broken ribs and all. Heart pounding and knees failing and smile still somehow present jumped.
The sword entered the Demon King's chest with a sound like a sigh. Not a clang, not a clash, a sigh. As if the blade and the body had both been waiting for this moment and were relieved it had finally right. The Demon King looked down at the blade in his chest and then up at Hummel, who hung from the sword's grip with his feet off the ground, and his face eaches from the Demon King's remaining golden eye.
The eye studied him, studied the man who had set out at 17 to do this exact thing and had not stopped until he did it.
There you are, Ish.
The Demon King said, echoing Hemi's words from the first exchange.
There you are. You said you would miss observing me.
Himo said, his voice strained from the effort of holding on.
The Demon King said,
I will.
And the single gold eye dimmed went dark, and 1200 years of existence ended on 3 syllables that sounded like they meant it.
Whether they did, whether he felt it, whether the Mimaki had finally become the real thing, in its last moment nobody would ever know. And that uncertainty was perhaps the most devastating thing about his death. Not the body crumbling, not the darkness dissolving, but the question of whether his last words were real. Hime got to his knees as the Demon King's hoodie dissolved into grey ash. The ash did not scatter it, settled gently onto the broken arena floor like snow onto a grave.
His sword clattered beside him, and he did not pick it up.
He knelt in the ash and the silence and the fading light, with his cracked ribs and his failing knee, and all 10 years of his war written on his body, and he said nothing.
There is nothing to say.
You do not give a speech after killing someone who grew flowers and built schools and might have felt everything or nothing at all. You just kneel and breathe and let the moment be what it is. Aisen's hands were ruined. The palms burned black from holding the shadow blade. No.
He looked at them without expression and then looked at Haita, who was already moving toward him with golden light gathering at his fingertips.
Haito healed me silence.
The burns resisted at first, collected by the Demon King's magic, but divine light was persistence made visible, and Haita was the most persistent man alive. The skin regrew slowly, painfully, and Aizen endured it the way he endured everything, by not acknowledging that enduring was remarkable.
She had been hovering for the duration of the fight, and her feet touched the ground with the gentleness of someone who had used everything she had and was holding herself together through sheer refuse. Jikrax. Her face was white. Her hands shook.
The mana exhaustion was deep enough that her ears drooped, the physical tail she could not control.
She walked to Himo, slowly knelt beside him in the ash, and put one hand on his shoulder.
She did not squeeze.
She did not speak.
She just placed her hand there and left it.
And knowing what she did not yet show, it was her version of sobbing.
Log Princess Feria dissolved with the Demon King's death.
The magic that have maintained it
returned to the air like steam off water.
She walked across the shattered arena floor, stepping over cracks and through ash. And when she reached the party, she sat down on the broken stone beside them and said nothing because nothing was the
4 heroes and 1 witness sitting in the ruins of a 12-year-old ambition, surrounded by ash that might have been a body and might have been a metaphor and was definitely both.
The castle groaned around them, deep structural sounds that said the framework keeping it standing had been the Demon King's will.
And that will was gone.
We should leave.
Frieren says, her voice barely above a whisper.
The castle will collapse within the hour.
Himo tried to stand and his knee gave out.
Aizen kept him with bandaged hands that must have screamed at the weight.
Haito took Himo's arm.
Black Princess grabbed the sword because someone had to, and she was the only one with free hands. 5 people stumbling through a dying castle toward the surface, towards light, toward whatever came after the end of everything they had been fighting for.
Arktieki, the word sepusi. They edge from the collapsing castle into dawn. Not the Jetu kind, not the watercolor sunrise of a painting, a war-down red and industrial and boozed with clouds that looked like they had been in a fight of their own. Behind them, the Black Citadel groaned its death rattle, walls folding inward. Towers collapsing with sounds like centuries of Hold Brook being released all at once.
Black Princess looked back and watched 1,200 years of architecture die in minutes.
The castle Denipo Chematekuri. Isak deflated like the wool holding it upright had simply decided it was done.
The ground beneath their feet vibrated with something that was not the castle's collapse. Something deeper, more fundamental, a shifting of earth that started as a hum and grew into a tremor.
Frieren stopped walking. She pressed one hand against the ground and closed her eyes. Disudi, she said. The Demon King said it was surface when the castle fell. Hihetotaji, Himi said.
Everyone, get behind Aizen.
Black Princess started to protest that she was not a combatant and then remembered that nobody thought she was, and that getting behind Aizen was just good policy regardless.
The plain crest opened, not violently, but precisely, like a book opening to a marked page.
Great sweeps of earth tilted and separated, and through the gaps came light, warm, golden light that had no business existing underground. But there it was, rising from the depths like a sunrise and reveled.
Structures emerged. Domes and spires and bridges and gardens. A city built with the care of someone who had 1,200 years to get the sequels right, and probably spent most of those centuries making sure the streetlights matched the architecture. 300,000 demons woke up on the last morning of the world they knew. Black Princess could see them through the gates in the rising earth, small figures in the golden underground light going about routines that had been established centuries ago, then stopping, looking up deeply as the ceiling crack opened and real sky poured in for the first time in generations. Some of them had normal-sun sky. She realized the children. There were children down there who had been born underground and lived their entire lives by artificial light. And now they were seeing clouds for the first time, and the clouds were red with wood on.
And that was so unfair, it made her chest hurt.
The city surfaced over 20 minutes, titanic, magical engineering, unwinding itself without its creator's guidance. Failsax, the Demon King, had built for exactly this scenario.
He had known.
He had known he would lose, and he had prepared his city to survive without him.
The streets aligned with the surface. Rims formed where click faces met the roads. The transition was not seamless, but it was intentional, every piece of it designed by someone who loved 300,000 people enough to build them a future he would not share. The first demon to reach the surface was small, maybe 5 years old by human standards, whatever age demon children are when they are too curious to be cautious. It climbed the nearest ramp on all fours and crested the edge of the new world with eyes like saucers. The sky!
It said, Iki.
Mama, the sky means!
Because clouds do that, they move, and this child had never seen it.
La Princess pressed her fist against her mouth and bit down hard because she was not going to cry in front of a battlefield.
She was not. She was absolutely not.
More demons followed, tentative at first, then flowing hundreds, becoming thousands, pouring out of every ramp and gap and stairway the city's emergence had created.
They were not what she expected.
Some had horns or gray skin or too many eyes, but most looked close enough to human that the difference was academic. They were close.
They carried belongings.
A woman held a broad keg with something luminous inside. A man clipped a stack of papers like they were worth more than his life.
They looked like refugees, and that was exactly what they were.
The demons saw the party 5 figures standing on the plain in front of their ruined castle, covered in dust and blood and ash, and they stopped. A spreading silence that moved through the crowd like a wave.
They knew!
They did not need to be told. They saw the castle in ruins and the hero standing, and they understood that the being who had built their world was gone. The silence was not rage. It was grief. It was the sound 300,000 people make when the foundation of everything they know deserts under their feet. Himo did something Black Princess would never forget. He straightened up despite his cracked ribs and failed knee, and the fact that he had killed the person these people loved most.
He straightened his back and swayed his shoulders and lifted his chin and walked toward 20,000 demons with no weapon in his hand. Aizen made a sound that was probably a word but came out as a growl of Egyptian.
Himo did not stop. He walked until he stood at the edge of the crowd, close enough that any one of them could have ended him. And he said in a voice that somehow carried across the entire plain, "Your king asked me to tell you the truth." The demons watched him with expressions. Black Princess could not decode anger and fear and grief and something that might have been hope, because hope is the thing that survives everything else. Himeo said, "The war is over. Your king just ends it." You chose to let you into the light. His last command was that you be seen not as monsters, not as enemies, as people.
His voice cracked on the last word, just slightly, just enough to prove that the hero of the South was speaking not from script, but from a heart that had just killed someone and was trying to be on
Turbitis!
A demon stepped forward from the crowd.
Tall, gray-skinned,
with the bearing of someone who had carrying authority for a long time.
She wore robes that might have been administrative, and her expression was control, but the control was freeing.
"You killed our king,"
she said.
"And now you ask us to thank you for it," Himo said. "No! I ask you to survive it. The difference is amazing."
The tall demon studied him for a long time, measuring him with eyes that had seen the Demon King's kindness firsthand and were now looking at the man who ended it.
No.
No.
My name is Soren,
she said.
I'm the city administrator. Temi wa habas no. Frieren spoke for the first time since leaving the castle. What happens now is complicated, she said, and it will require years of negotiation that I am not qualified to lead. But I can tell you what will not happen. Dewa tonomasu ka? Your king's final burial protected a witness. She looked at Last Princess. The world will know you were here first, 300,000 of you, living in peace. That changes the conversation. Sulin looked at Last Princess with an expression that was either assessment or pleading. Who are you? Black Princess said. I am literally the least important person on this plane, but I have a really good memory, and I promised the king I would use it.
Oh.
Detention did not break it. Transformed from the sharp edge of potential violence into the dull ache of shared exhaustion. Kimonzan hero standing on a plane that was also a graveyard, that was also a birthplace. The castle finished collapsing behind him with a final resigned crash, and the death cloud rolled over everyone, equally demon and human and elf and deerf, covered in the same gray film, indistinguishable in the dust. And there was something poetic about that, but Black Princess was too tired to otekurere kokoni. Solen organized her people with the calm efficiency of someone who had managed a hidden city for decades and was not going to start being competent just because the seating was gone. She directed families to open ground. sent runners to check structural damage, established a perimeter that was not a defense line, but a census cordon, making sure nobody was lost in the transition.
Himmel watched her work and said to no one in particular, the Demon King chose his people well.
Frieren said,
He had 1200 years to choose. Himmel said, still chose well. Aizen Sata. He did not announce it or make a speech about it.
He did. His legs simply informed him their service had been terminated, and his body negotiated a controlled descent that ended with a dwarf sitting on a rock with his banished aunt in his lap.
Haito sat beside him and healed the berms
Properly, now that adrenaline was not prioritizing speed over thoroughness.
The golden light sank into Aizen's palms, slowly, tenderly. Haito's healing was always better when he was not being Sanet.
Does it hurt?
Haite asked.
Aizen said,
Which meant, yes, enormously. The sun climbed higher, and the red dog mellowed into something that resembled actual morning. La Princess sat on a piece of rubble that had been a column and watched the improbable sight of a demon city, learning the exist above ground.
Children discovered wind, actually discovered it.
The concept of moving air was new to them, and they stood on the plain with their rooms out and their faces up and laughed at the sensation of something else. Mizibabo, pacing against no skin. Adults stepped farther back and watched with expressions that mixed wonder and terror in equal parts.
The above world was everything they had been taught to fear, and it had grass.
La Princess's lack power flickered one last time in the castle's dying magical field, a brief burst that froze her vision for a heartbeat and showed her not a past memory this time, but a possibility.
You sure? The demon city integrated into the surface world. Humans and demons sharing trade routes and arguments, and terrible parking decisions. It was not a prophecy. Her power did not do prophecies. It was a probability, a weighted outcome, calculated from the variables present on this field right now. A hero who chose honesty, an administrator who chose survival, a witness who chose to remember. It could work. It was not guaranteed, but it could work.
She told Frieren about the vision.
The elf listened without expression and then said,
Probabilities derived from temple asabashi are unreliable. As predictor.
But La Princess has seen Frieren's air twitch when you mentioned the trade routes.
Frieren wanted it to work too.
The elf, who had watched civilizations rise and fall and rise again, was not immune to hope. She was just better at hiding it. Which in Frieren's case meant hiding it so well she did not know she was doing it.
Frieren,
La Princess said,
you are literally smiling.
Frieren touched the human face.
No, I am not.
She was. Himmel found them and sat down with the control collapse that said his body had officially filed its resignation. He leaned against a broken wall and closed his eyes, and for 3 breaths, looked like an old man instead of a young hero. Then he opened his eyes, and the hero was back, like a light switched on.
Soen has requested formal negotiation with the nearest human settlement. Nah.
He said.
She is already drafting towns.
Frieren said. That was fast. Himmel said.
She said, and I quote, my king planned for every outcome, including the one where he died, and I was left holding the clipboard.
La Princess said, Sansiraktimit! Everyone stared at her.
What?
She said,
I have been through a lot. Haika sat down with them and opened his journal. He had been writing in it during the demon emergence while healing Aizen's hands while the world rearranged itself around him.
His pen had not stopped.
I want to read my entry for the battle.
He said. Nobody adjusted because Hader, reading his journal, had become the party's version of a lullaby.
定女の
He said.
定女の
I have been through a lot.
그 디몬犬이때 헬 스텝킴 아이타바데르 레무나쇼 리쿠에르 Aizen held a sword made of darkness with his bare hands, which I am classifying under self-harm. It will be discussing with him later. Frieren used the Millennium of Accumulator magic. Black Princess carried its sword home. The day no war ended. We are very tired.
The party sat in silence for a while after Haita closed his journal. The sun was fully up now, and the plain was alive with the sounds of a city being born above ground. Somewhere a demon child was trying to catch a butterfly and failing spectacularly. Somewhere a human scout from a distant patrol had arrived at the edge of the plain and was staring at the new city with the expression of someone whose report was not going to be believed.
Somewhere history was being re-listened by simple proximity, demons and daylight coexisting not because of a treaty or a spell, but because a castle fell and nobody had time to be afraid before they had.
Already started being neighbors, Hiii? Black Princess said.
He looked at her with the tired, wolf expression that made people follow him into castles full of demons. What you did walking toward them was no weapon. That was the bravest thing I should ever seen.
Hiii said.
It was the least brave thing I did today. Fighting the Demon King is easier. Fighting home, I only had to risk my life. Walking toward those people, I had to risk being wrong, and being wrong meant they would die, hating us for what we take from them.
Black Princess said, but you are not wrong. He will say.
I was terrified that I might be, and did it anyway. That is not bravery.
Black Princess thought, that is Hiii. Frieren stopped and walked to the edge of the plain where the demon city made the surface world.
She looked down into the warm golden light of the underground and up into the morning blue of the sky and stood at the threshold between them, two worlds meeting at her feet.
The Demon King had asked her if time made feeling real.
She did not have an answer, but she had a response.
She knelt and placed her palm flat against the demon boot road and cast a simple spell, the same spell she had spent the first 100 years of her life mastering. The one she cast for Himo every Aldrin. Flowers bloomed along the border where demon road met human soil. Small purple world flowers growing from magic that was 1,000 years old and still remembered how to be gentle.
That is your answer.
La Pensa said, watching the flowers spread. Frieren says,
I suppose it is.
She looked at the bubble blooms with an expression that most people would call neutral, but Lock Princess knew was Friering at her most emotional. A micro-adjustment of the eyes, a slight softening of
Emos.
He asked if time makes feeling real.
Frieren said,
and the answer is, time does not make feeling real.
Time reveals that feeling was real all along. We just needed enough of it to notice.
Black Princess sat on the border between the demon road and the human plain and pulled the frozen flower from her pocket. The flower from her bedside table that had started glows when the lamp power up waited to blow back to town. It was still frozen, still growing fakely, but warmer now, as if proximity to Frieren's freshly cast flowers had reminded it what flowers were for.
She held it up and watched the dawn light pass through its preserved petals,
casting tiny rainbows on her palm. Testing. This flower was proof that some things survive the freezing. Proof that some beauty is preserved by the very force that seems to stop it.
Puktak.
Lakmiskuri. Speaky, some things need to be paused before they can be understood.
Aizuma beat beside her and held out something. His iron charm, the one she had been wearing since Arc 1 and the identical one she had given back to him.
Two eye-chans. The paradox! He looked at both of him and said the most words Black Princess had ever heard him say in sequence.
This one is from the future.
He heard up hers.
This one is for now.
He held up his.
They are the same, and they are both real.
He placed both charms in her palm and closed her fingers around them.
Time is a circle. Things come back.
Then he walked away.
And La Princess sat there holding two iron charms and trying not to cry and feeling completely. The day wore on, and the plane transferred from battlefield to settlement. Soren's uneducated genius turned chaos into organization with the efficiency of someone who had been running a city for decades under significantly harder conditions. Demons, set up shelters. Himis from a distant patrol opened water. Haito performed the blessings that technically had nothing to do with demons, but he adjusted the wording to be non-denominational because Haito is nothing is not duologically flexible. Himu helped carry a crate of medical supplies that his body absolutely could not support, and he did it anyway because nobody had told the crate he was injured. As the sun began to set, painting the first day of the new world in golds and oranges that seemed specifically designed to make everything look helpful, La Princess felt the pull the same backward tug that had yamped her through time at the start of this arc, but gentler now, not a summons, but a suggestion.
The frozen flower in her pocket pulsed warm against her hip.
The lag power steered chronostatic, freezing at the edges of her vision.
It was time or it would be soon.
The power that had pulled her here was preparing to take her home back to the future, back to the party. She knew as old and grey and past their prime away from the party she had just watched save the Jinvolt.
She found Himmel watching the sunset from a piece of Castle Rebel, his face gilded by the dying light.
He looked at her and knew he always knew.
You are leaving.
He said, not a question. Soon. She says, the lag power is winding up. I can feel it. Himunagi. He looked at the sunset and then back at her. And his smile was the real one, the one that made people want to be heroes.
Black Princess.
He said,
Thank you to Wiknishi.
Black Princess.
Sat, thank you for being worth wanashi.
And Himo laughed, the warm, bright sound that had started a journey
10 years ago and was not ready to stop. The party gathered without being asked. Frieren and Aizen and Haita appearing one by one as if summoned by the same instinct.
They stood in the last light of the first day after the war and looked at each other and looked at Life Princess. And the farewell began the way the best farewells do not, with grand speeches, but with deep.
Gravity of 5 people standing in a circle.
Knowing that the circle was about to become 4. La Princess faced the lap power building, the freeze coming, the snack that had tore across time. And she thought, not yet. Just a little longer. Just one more sunset with these people. Just one more.
Act 7, The Crown of Ashes.
Frieren spoke first, which was unusual because Frieren never spoke first and preferred to let moments happen around her while she observed from the safe emotional distance. But this was not a safe moment, and Frieren had apparently decided that 1300 years of emotional avoidance was enough.
You carry the flower.
She said to La Princess.
The frozen one. I gave it to him 60 years from now. And he will give it to someone. And it will reach your nightstand and become glowing. I did not understand what it was about until today.
She paused.
It was not a gift. It was a compass pointing you here to this moment, so we will not face it alone.
You ground this, La Princess said. Inconsiderous. Fresh up.
風邪みプランだって。 Ayon kaete fubi nothing except the eye down for severe days.
She swayed slightly, and Hiii caught her elbow with practice. Automatic support.
Frieren arrow the contact for 3 seconds before gingerly removing his hand, addressing that qualify as a fascinating base by Frieren standards.
Le campus? Metaphor?
Frieren continued.
It is more like a terra. The flower knows when it is needed and pours whatever it needs across, whatever distance is necessary. Very elegant magic, if I say so myself, and I am saying so because nobody else will.
Black Princess pulled the flower out and looked at it. Really looked the frozen petals catching the last sunset light, the faint inner glow that had guided her through temporal displacement and underground tea castles and philosophical arguments with demon kings. A compass. A preserved piece of beauty set backward through time by an elf who had finally learned after 1300 years that asking for help was not weakness. She said,
This is the most emotionally sophisticated thing you have ever done, and you do not even remember doing it yet.
Frieren said,
That checks.
He may laughed and then winced because laughing with cracked ribs was magically inadvisable.
He clutched his side and kept laughing anyway,
because Himo treated minor physical agony the way most people treated mild weather as something that was happening around him, but not particularly to age.
So future, Frieren sends a magical flower back through time to summon help for a battle she already won. She's real when...
Rapison.
That is either the most cautious strategy I have ever heard, or Frieren does not trust us.
Frieren says,
I sent it because I needed a weakness, not a warrior. The world needs to know what happened here, all of what happened. Not just the sword part.
The demon Connie's garden, Black Princess said. Frieren nodded.
The garden, no city. The children get the machines guide. The administrator can get 300,000 people alive underground. The king, who grew flowers over graves and meant both things sincerely. History will simplify this. It heroes and monsters. It always does. You will not let it.
La Princess hurt the flower against her chest.
I will not love it, she said, and meant it the way you mean things when you have just watched a child discover wind for the first time. Aizen reached into its pack and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it carefully with bandaged hands that had to be screaming and revealed gardening gloves. Grey leather worn soft with centuries of use. The Demon King's gardening gloves, the ones they had found in the throne room garden. Aizen had taken them during the fight. During the apocalyptic battle between a 1200-year-old demon and 4 mortal heroes. Aizen had found time to pick up gardening gloves and put them in his pack.
Why?
Black Princess Komaneshi. Aizen said, someone should keep them. He held them on to Black Princess.
She stroked them with hands that shook.
They were soft, the leather worn by hands that had tended flowers between wars, between centuries of guilt and loneliness, and the slow construction of a civilization built from the desperate need to end. Egg something beautiful in a world that called you a monster. Inside the left club, someone has stitched a tiny flower, a personal touch.
A secret end twist that nobody was meant to see.
Black Princess pressed the gloves against her face and breathed in and smelled earth and age and something sweet that might have been the lingering scent of a garden that had never seen real sunlight and bloomed anyway. Ibi dance.
Aizen sat, pointing at the gloves.
But what he was not, what he did.
And Black Princess understood that this was Aizen's version of a eulogy.
12 words for a 1200-year-old being who had been complex enough to deserve a library of words, but who Aizen honored.
With the position of someone, he understood that sometimes less is the only thing that is enough.
The party stood in the sunset and held the weight of a war that was over and a world that was just beginning. And the silence between them was not empty. It was full, so full that adding words would have.
Eeping like pouring water into the ocean.
足手を借りて
Himio said.
His voice had changed the hero. Timber was gone, replaced by something softer and more fragile. The voice of the man underneath the title.
Black Princess looked at him and saw that the sunset light had found the lines around his eyes. Young by any measure, but 10 years of war had carved something ancient into his expression.
上も坂とでです
He said,
I was 17 I did not know what it was cost
See.
I didn't know that being would feel like this
He looked at his hands, the hero's hands, the hands that had held the sword.
Atoa will be happy
Frieren says,
Give it 50 years.
Himmel looked at her.
She was looking at the horizon with that expression she got when she was reaching back through centuries of memory for the right thread.
The distance between the act and the feeling is not always negotiable.
She said,
Sometimes the meaning arrives late, Mora night. I once saved the village from a dragon and felt nothing for 90 years. Then one afternoon I passed through the village again and saw the great-grandchildren of the people. I saved playing in a market, and I sat down on a munch and cried for an hour.
She shrugged.
Emotion ga slow. Sometimes yours will catch up.
Hime stared. Then his face did something complicated and beautiful, an expression that contained grief and gratitude and the beginning